Okay, so we are nearing the end of the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa. I believe we've had a hearty lunch out by the poolside, and they're all geared up for the next 2 sessions as we wind up these 2 days of very insightful debate and discussion around the various facets on internet freedom. Up next this afternoon, we have a discussion that will explore the costs associated with internet shutdowns. What does it involve? How does it affect the ordinary citizen, the little mom around the corner who is trying to earn her living, making money using a mobile money counter? What does it mean for her? What does it also mean for the average SME in the affected country? So that will be part of conversation number 1. And then session 8, we'll look at the cybersecurity strategies around that for African countries. Where do they stand? What are the gaps? What are the opportunities? But that will start a little later. We are kicking off to start a bit late, so it means our Q&A may be slightly shortened, but also means our space for discussion will also take a bit of a cut. I'd like to call to stage James Lungabo, who is the moderator for this session, and his panelists, Ebele Okobi, Anthony Chigazira, and Wisdom Donko. Are we all in the house? I see you. Wisdom, I see you. Anthony, I see you. Ebele, I see you too. And James is at the back. So if we could get started, have a seat. Are there any questions anybody has from earlier as they take the stage? Any? Okay, there were many questions after the discussion around violence against women online. I'll take it that we'll keep those burning inside, which is not good, it's pretty unhealthy. But if you insist on holding on to them, by all means. So our moderator at the back, I think he just wants to take a bit of a run. It's okay. As he runs to the stage, let's give a hand to our panelists and to James as he runs to the stage. There he goes, there he goes. And he's on the stage. Thank you. What do you get? But you were there. We were with you. I want to just for a few minutes after. We won't just before the place is shut down. Just took a quick run. Okay, so as the setup, just a quick reminder, those of you who require your visa refunds, please come with your original certificate or rather receipt to the back of the hall to claim your refund. Are we ready on stage? Okay, back to James.
Good afternoon, everyone. I would like to welcome you back from the lunch. Sorry, I'm one of those that went down very late to eat lunch, and I had to eat it very fast just to be here on time. You'll excuse me for that. So I welcome you to this first session for the afternoon, and we are basically going to continue with what we have been discussing over the past 2 days, only that this time we are looking at the cost-related issues with the internet shutdowns. Yesterday, we had a talk on what internet shutdowns are actually, and people were talking about partial shutdowns and different aspects of the shutdowns. And I think we don't need to get into those details today. We need to look more at how does the layman out there, how does that person selling in a shop or that person setting up a small business get affected when the internet shutdowns occur. My name is James Wire, and I'm ICT consultant based here in Uganda, Kampala, and I'll be the moderator for this session. And with me here, I'll let each one introduce themselves quickly, starting from the lady on my left.
Hello, I'm Ebele Okobi. I head public policy for Africa at Facebook.
Hello, I'm Wisdom from Ghana National IT Agency.
Hello, I'm Anthony Chigazira, Executive Secretary for GRASA. So I represent the regulators, communications regulators for Southern Africa. But I must quickly make a disclaimer that what I'm going to express here are purely my views, and they don't necessarily mirror those of my principals. Thank you.
Thank you for that disclaimer, Anthony. We all know that the internet has graduated from a time when it was more of an elitist product or service to today when nearly everyone is practically using it or is affected by it in one way or another. And just to give you examples here in Uganda, where I am, one day someone challenged me and said, but how does my grandmother in the village benefit from the internet? She's totally offline. And I told him, look, she can benefit from it indirectly. And he asked me how. I told him, are you aware that today a Ugandan who is based, say, in the US can send mobile money to his grandmother in a rural village onto her phone that is not even a smartphone using the internet? That's when his eyes opened up and he realized that the net is real and there are a lot more beneficiaries of the internet than we who are always on Facebook and Twitter chatting around the whole day. So I'll throw back to my panelists here. One of the things I want us to start off with is quickly, you have heard about some of the internet shutdowns which have been going on all over this continent and even in some other parts of the world. Do you really believe genuinely that they have a commercial implication, especially in terms of incomes and lost business on the communities that are affected? Yep, I'll start with you.
So I'll start by saying that Facebook is actually interested and is in the process of commissioning a study really to look at to see if we can quantify the cost of shutdowns. And this is something that we're actually looking for partnership with civil society, but also with governments who are interested in understanding the economic impact. In the absence of solid numbers, I do think it's interesting to think about, to quantify the buckets that there could be, and it'll be interesting to hear from my fellow panelists. So if you think about the cash flows, so the extent to which businesses are online, the extent to which funds are exchanged online. If we're sitting here in East Africa, you look at mobile money and mobile payments, and you think about the impact of shutting off access to that flow of income, shutting off access to that flow of revenue for large and small businesses. Think about that. If you also think about things like health, what I find quite interesting is the extent to which we all recognize, civil society, government, that sort of technology and moving things and technical solutions are the future. The more that we move towards the future in terms of bringing things online, the more vulnerable societies are to shutdown. So if you think about health, and if you think about the extent to which, and I'm just knowing how people use even platforms like WhatsApp and Facebook to engage. So in Brazil, for example, an interesting example is that the majority of interactions between patients and doctors or healthcare providers are done on WhatsApp. So think about the impact of someone not being able to reach their doctor in times of crisis. Think about the impact, and particularly when you have shutdowns where there isn't access not only to data but also to the phone. Think about the impact on emergency services. Think about the impact on being able to reach your healthcare provider. Think about the impact of not being able, if you're running your business, not to be able to pay a supplier. Think about the impact. There's even simple things like not being able, if someone's trying to complete a transaction, not being able to complete that transaction. And then if you think in sort of a macro way, if a government or a country is known as a country where these types of disruptions happen regularly, if you're thinking about investments, so investors who are thinking about investment in that economy, if it is characterized by shutdowns, you can think 2, 3, 4, 5 years into the future where that would become a country and an economy in which people are less likely to invest. I think these are all questions that it would be very, very interesting to see actual concrete numbers put against. Because what we suspect is that when governments are thinking about shutting down, they may have a sense of what the impact is on political discourse, and that may be what they're focusing on, but they're not thinking broadly about the impact on flows of revenue. They're not thinking broadly about the impact on their ability to be able to raise things like tax revenue. So again, not concrete numbers now, but this is something that we're absolutely definitely working on and looking at. And I think even being able to delineate the categories of economic impact is useful.
Yeah, okay, thank you, Jane. When we talk about shutting down internet, there are so many players that will be affected. We have the hospitals, we have the NGOs, the banking sector, the SMEs that we see, and then they will be affected. And then looking at it from economic point of view and then the social point of view, virtually in this 21st century, everything that we do now, we do it online. So I'm going to cite an example in Ghana. My agency, for instance, we've laid fiber optic cable throughout the whole country. We've connected all government agencies onto one platform. We provided internet services to all government agencies. We're empowering all private organizations to also leverage on this platform. And then let's take passport, for example. When you want to apply for passport, you have to do it online. That means when you shut down internet, you can't apply. Let's take hospitals, for example. Now, government of Ghana is connecting all hospitals onto the platform, providing them with e-health services. That means a doctor can sit in one hospital and diagnose a patient in another hospital using the internet. So when you shut down this internet, that means a patient sitting somewhere will die. So this is what we are talking about. So, and let's also look at looking at tax revenues and then all that. Majority of the taxes that come to Ghana comes from these online services, the businesses, SMEs that we see around. And then about 70% of these taxes goes towards paying of salaries. So that means if you shut down internet for a number of days, government is going to lose what? Revenue. And they will be unable to what? Pay its employees. So these are some of the issues, that will happen when a government tries to what? Shut down an internet. And then it's something that we all have to talk about. And then when we encourage this, then that means implementation of IPv6 will not be possible. So when we implement IPv6, that means everybody, every individual will be will be connected from their homes. Your fridges, your televisions and everything will be connected. And if you don't have internet, that means you can't do anything. You cannot even open the fridge. So that's what we are talking about.
Thank you.
Well, at this stage, I'm sure the list has been thoroughly exhausted of all the different economic areas or areas of economic activity that are affected when there is an internet shutdown. I could just add one or two others where if you look at transport system, for instance, a lot of congestion because there's no internet. Sometimes you have to physically go where you could have just sent an email and gotten the whole document, the letter, push the letter through. You probably now have to find alternative means, which means fuel and all those other costs to the economy. And also in some economies, take for instance Zimbabwe, an economy like Zimbabwe where of course they talk of high rates of unemployment. They say 90%, 80%, whatever unemployment. But the reality on the ground is that the economy is now got a very big informal sector. It's a very, very big informal sector which is contributing to the economy. And obviously, when we try and track the economic losses, at times the contribution of the informal sector is maybe overlooked. So I just wanted to add that.
Okay, thank you. I just wanted to give, I'm not going to assume that everyone knows what the typical African setting is like, but I want to use an example to show you how deeply entrenched the use of the internet is in our day-to-day activities. Most of us here, especially in Africa, we micromanage our activities. Unlike in the Western world, where if you want to build a house, you go to company X, pay them this amount of money, and they'll construct the house for you. It's very common in Africa to have someone get a local builder, and then on a daily basis, they evaluate. You want how many bricks? 1,000 bricks. We go buy the 1,000 bricks. You want sand? 2 trucks. And sometimes you have to either use mobile money to transfer that money, you use WhatsApp. There is a time a young man was doing a project for me at home, constructing a store, and I had to leave the home and go somewhere else and spent a week. But on a daily basis, before I could pay him, he would take a snapshot of the work that has been done, and he sends me via WhatsApp. Sometimes he would take clips, video clips of 10 seconds. And that was enough to confirm to me that he has been able to do the work as expected. And then I would use mobile money to send the money. That is how real the internet is. And there are so many small people doing businesses like that all over the country. Who do we think, or who do you think, any of you can take this on, who do you think gets hardest hit? Because most times when I see people who complain about internet shutdowns, to me, I usually see those who are like, oh, I couldn't Facebook the whole day. But who is really hardest hit in your view?
So this is where I think quantitative data and research would be really quite helpful. The one thing I will say is that if you are a small business owner, everyone knows that small business owners, your margins are very, very small. So they're very, very narrow. So not being able to collect money for payment after you've already put out money, like say, take your small builder who's already paid for materials and then is not able to be repaid, 1 or 2 days of that, small business owners can go completely out of business. And so you may not hear their voices because they don't have time to be on Facebook moaning about it, or they may not have access to traditional forms of media and their voices may not be heard. But those are the people who are least able to bounce back. And then, I mean, across many countries, although we know that there's a huge informal sector, we also know that there isn't a huge amount of support in terms of government support for small business owners, and there is no safety net. So to the extent to which an internet shutdown shuts down a small business owner, that we may not hear about it, but the impact of it on that particular person, their life, their family, and ultimately on the economy is quite substantial. And this is where research, specific research on this would help.
For the researchers, that's a call out. Facebook is probably willing to sponsor that. We hope so.
Yes, to me, everybody get hit. I depend on internet very much. My house, I can't live without internet. Yes, and then so as someone sitting in his or her little corner doing business, I mean, when you cut off internet, this present days, most of these things ride on telecommunication infrastructure, and the mobile services and all that. And then some of these people use this network to actually provide service to the community. So when you cut it off, I mean, they'll not be able to do their business. A farmer sitting somewhere, he wants a kind of, he wants to contact, let's say, an agric extension officer for an advice to do something on a crop or something. And if you cut this internet, he or she will not be able to communicate. So also, if someone is trying to remit some funding from outside to within the country or your local country, I mean, the same person, that person cannot also receive the money to do what he or she wants to do. So to me, everybody gets hit. It's something that we shouldn't tolerate. Government is trying to empower the people, employ the people, provide jobs for the people, then you turn back again and then you go and unplug the internet. I mean, I don't understand this.
Just to add to what Wisdom has mentioned, well, of course, the big capital, the owners of capital, the big institutions, the banks, where big transfers and investment transactions are done, yes, they lose. But most of them have got workarounds. They've got redundancy routes, and they use self-healing systems. So some of them can still have business continuity plans which they implement. But really, when you look at the impact, I think the hardest hit are the intelligentsia, that is the academic, the students, the university students, who may not have any other way around it. They need the internet to research. They've got deadlines to meet, college. They've got assignments to submit. And all the other people like ourselves here, if you can imagine if there was to be a shutdown here in Uganda when we are having this forum, would obviously pack and go. If we realize it's not going to be restored anytime soon, we would pack our bags and go. And you can imagine all the losses that would have happened. So yes, everybody loses, even the individuals who do everything now, the telephone calls on voice over IP, data over IP, WhatsApp calling, everybody really who uses the internet. If you look at the statistics that are coming, we hear there's about 3.5, 3.6 billion internet users out there. And you are looking at, if you are now to consider the proportion for that country which has got the shutdown, you can do your numbers and then try and estimate. And all those means they will be affected.
Yes, I want to add to that. Yeah, to add to what he said, example is, let's use Egypt as an example. During their shutdown, it cost them almost about, I think, $90 million within 5 days. And I think it's $80 million in just a day to shut down internet. That money can do a whole lot for a country.
Yeah, true. He's brought up the issue of Egypt when they had that shutdown. Some sources say $90 million. Others even say that one was a lower estimate. They pushed it up to about $110 million that they lost in those 5 days. For Uganda's case, during the recent election, when they turned off the net, I've seen estimates online averaging $25 million for just that one day that we were off. And I think this combines the fact that even the mobile money transactions, which normally could have taken place even without what I would call the external internet, you don't have to get out of the country to use it locally, was also affected. So it costs quite a bit. However, with these shutdowns, there are different players. You have the telecommunications companies, you have the government, which usually approaches them either through the regulator, and then you have the clients of these telecoms companies who pay their money or are willing to pay for a service. And they have been very faithful. They regularly buy data bundles or they pay for connectivity and they utilize and they come back and pay. Now, on one side, the government somehow tends to use whatever means under their disposal to make sure the telcos comply with their directive. But there's an issue of trust also between the telcos and the clients. Because the clients have been faithful to these telcos. Now, all of a sudden, they wake up and they can't get service X because someone else has said so. So that's an issue of biting the hand that feeds you when it comes to the telcos. How do you think that relationship can, in future, be used to ensure that we either mitigate, probably actually we mitigate some of these effects of the internet shutdowns. You want to start?
Okay.
Let me start with him here.
All right, I could start. I think, yes, there are a number of players who are in it. And yes, there can be some mitigants which are possible. But what I want to mention is that it's not really a case of biting the hand that feeds you. Because I think when there is a shutdown, it's more of an act, something that would say a hand of God or an act of God, with something which the operator has no say in it. I'm sure the operators would love to keep the service running because it doesn't benefit them at all to shut down. So they would really love this to continue offering the services because yes, it would be like betraying their customers who are up to date on their bills. Everything is okay on the part of the customer. The relationship, they've got a good relationship with the customer. Then they get a call or a message to say you have to shut down by tomorrow, 12 o'clock. Really, I think it's something unfortunate, something which the operators would want to avoid if they could. Because yes, it's like they lose trust of their customers, especially if it only affects one particular operator and other operators are still able to offer the service. So what I would suggest maybe as a mitigant is that maybe if we are to involve those with money, the OTTs, the Facebooks, the Googles, who are making huge sums of money, paying taxes in the Americas and the UK maybe, and not contributing much to the other economies where I'm sure there's very little advertising that they can get from us here in Africa, or institutions that are here in Africa. There may be very little as compared to what they get from those in the USA, for instance. So, but however, I think because of the amount of business that they generate, they could at least assist build up some robust systems in all these countries, which can make shutting down internet very difficult. Because if you've got robust systems, there's always a workaround. If you shut down on the submarine cable, there's still the satellite and so on and so forth. There are different kinds of shutting down, but I'm sure if they contribute towards what the telcos are contributing. The telcos are contributing a huge amount from their profits towards reaching the unreached, accessing those who are in remote parts where it's not economically viable for them to put a network, to roll out a network. So they are at least contributing funds so that at least those who are in those areas can be connected. The unconnected can be connected. So I think the telcos are really stretching themselves. And it's unfortunate that at some point they can face the risk of a shutdown, because to them that is their business, and to them it means the whole world.
I think it'd be helpful for me to share a little bit of information. So first of all, I think it's actually inaccurate to say that companies like Google and Facebook contribute nothing. If you think about what we've been talking about, we're talking about people using WhatsApp, which is an incredible lifeline for people. People use WhatsApp, so people pay the telcos fees in order to use a telco, so that the money that the telcos make is not money that they're gifting, it's money that they take from people because the people are paying for a service. But people are able to use WhatsApp, Facebook, Google, for all of these incredible things. So to say that Facebook contributes nothing, or to say that WhatsApp contributes nothing, given all of the ways that people are using Facebook, WhatsApp, and all these platforms to do incredible things, I think is inaccurate. I also think it's actually quite interesting because I just want to make sure that I'm getting this right. Are you recommending that an OSP, so like that Facebook or Google, create a system in contravention of local law that would then, so because the telcos don't shut down because they want to, they shut down because they have to. They shut down because in that particular country, that particular government has made them shut down. I'm just trying to understand, is the recommendation that a company like Facebook would then build some sort of system that would be outside of the law and that would remain in operation despite government order? Because I think that would be, particularly coming from government, I think that would be an interesting recommendation. But aside from that, I do think that there is a conversation to be had about access, and that's one of the reasons why companies like Facebook and Google are actually investing quite heavily. Not so, I know people talk a lot about free basics, but we are also investing heavily in infrastructure. So partnering with local companies to figure out innovative solutions to actually address the issues related to rural access. And Google is doing that as well. We're creating Aquila, so there's tons of programs, but those I don't think those address the fundamental issue of government shutdowns, unless the implication is that Facebook or Google or companies like that would create systems that would be somehow above the law, which I would actually be interested in knowing if that's what the recommendation is.
Anthony? Wisdom.
Okay, this is when corruption and transparency comes in. See, we don't need strong men. We need strong institutions. When we have strong institutions, some of these things we can stand up to it. If you have a court that is very strong, and if you have an institution that is very strong, I mean, even government cannot even come near and say, I want to shut down the internet. I'll give you a similar example in Ghana. Ghana, the law systems are working very well. We have freedom of speech and all that. Anybody talks nonsense at any time. There was an incident that the telcos actually wanted to block, I think, Skype and WhatsApp also. Because what their reason is, they are not making the revenue that they wanted. So they submitted a proposal to a regulator, that is a National Communication Authority. Yeah, so for them to actually block WhatsApp. So because the National Communication Authority is a strong institution with very good people working in there who are well known within the internet governance space, actually put the information out there for public to debate on it. So we have so many champions in the like of Professor Quino and so on. Within 5 minutes, they started jumping on radio stations and TV stations and all that. They kicked against it. So the civil society came out, we thought, wrote a letter to the government that this thing, no way. So what happened was the regulator kind of has to tell the telcos it's not possible. So think of any other thing. So these are some of the things. If you have strong institutions, some of these things, even government, the president cannot even say they are going to shut down the internet.
Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I just want to clarify something.
Yes.
The issue of revenue now coming from data, from WhatsApp, yes, indeed, additional revenues are supposed to come from there. But the reality on the ground is, of all the 15 countries in Southern Africa who I represent, you find all of them have had serious losses on their revenue. It's a fact, because most of their revenue was coming from voice. Because voice revenue, the model is very simple. You pay as you speak. As you phone and you speak, they're getting their revenue. But the plans that they have to go into for data, someone pays probably for the whole month what they could have gotten in 2 hours or in 2 days So the reality on the ground is that they have lost revenue. Yes, the business model has changed, but even the new model, they are losing revenue big time, and the regulators are feeling it because those guys contribute from their profits a significant chunk that goes first of all towards the regulators' cost of regulating. Then they also contribute towards developing the infrastructure. In all the countries, they develop the infrastructure, which is used by even by the Facebook customers, by the Google customers. They need that infrastructure. And I'm saying, yes, they could be contributing. They are giving us free service because WhatsApp appears to be free in a way, but so is somebody who is sitting in America where they have managed to get maybe from the 50 billion profit, if they are charging 10, assuming they are charging 12%, that is charged, say, in Botswana. If they are getting tax 12%, that's about what? 6 billion or something like that. 6 billion that they get in America, which they are not getting in Uganda here. So I'm saying to assist where they are not contributing much. Yes, they are contributing, but the contribution is not as much as the telcos who are contributing. They employ a lot of people, a lot more than that Google employ in Africa. And they also, in addition, they are normally the biggest taxpayers in those countries, those telcos. And I'm saying the Googles on their part, why don't they maybe even invest in research which will sort of help make it difficult to disconnect internet. Now it's easy to shut down. That's why it's happening. Make a contribution towards making it impossible.
Anthony, I think the point has been made very clearly. Did you, Ebele, you want to quickly respond?
I don't think.
Wisdom.
I don't think the telcos are losing revenue. Those guys are doing business. It's business they are doing. And if I want data and I use my money and buy data, I mean, I know how I'm going to use my data, what I'm going to use my data for. It doesn't concern them.
Okay.
Whether I use it for Facebook, WhatsApp, or whatever it is, it's not their business. It's my money I'm using in buying the data. So I don't think, I mean, they are losing revenue. They are making business.
Wisdom, thanks for that. I just wanted to say something here, Dom, the moderator. At least as far as I know, there are efforts that are going on, especially with the likes of Google and even Facebook, to invest in infrastructure. It may be at a higher level than we are seeing in Africa. Recently, when the SpaceX shuttle backfired and exploded as it was taking off, it had was a Facebook satellite they were sending up costing $200 million. All went up in flames. So I think, to be fair to them, they're doing something, but maybe what he wants is to see that you do more and make it more visible. But I also anticipate in future a scenario where the shutdowns, if I put on the radical hat that I tend to have, if we have these technologies that are satellite-based spreading all over, and they're easily accessible, especially with the normal gadgets we use daily, relying on the fiber that goes across to the ocean will just be more of a backup. You'll be able to get access anywhere. Like there, we used to have shortwave radio. Shortwave was used a lot in the 80s and the 70s when you wanted to broadcast radio stations beyond even the boundaries of the country, especially in places where you didn't have physical access. And so in terms of propaganda, it was very useful by then when countries were fighting each other. So maybe a similar thinking could help reduce on the internet shutdowns if you have a shortwave approach towards access. However, Ebele, I'll give you a chance before I ask the last question and we turn to the audience.
So I would just say a couple of things. So you're right in terms of investment. Facebook and Google are actually investing huge amounts of money in access and connectivity. I don't actually think that's the point of this conversation, but I do want to raise a couple of things that I think are interesting, particularly if you juxtapose it with the conversation yesterday. So the conversation yesterday, there was a huge amount of concern over American companies or US companies being in a position where we are sort of exporting American law. So what I find interesting is that today what's being recommended is that Facebook essentially creates some sort of system that would allow it to basically so that Facebook would be able to not pay attention to any national laws at all, and regardless of any shutdowns, keep the internet on. Now, I'm not venturing a point of view one way or the other, but I'm just trying to demonstrate the conflict here in the conversation between yesterday and today. When yesterday people felt very afraid of one company having the power that would allow it to essentially have more power than governments that are elected. I just want to talk about, I think that is actually a very interesting statement, particularly if you believe in government, particularly if you believe in elected officials. So that's one. Two, the other point that I would make related to the conversation now is around, oh God, I forgot my point. It'll come back to me.
It'll come back to you. So anyway, finally, for the panelists, is the justification, the security excuse, a good justification for internet shutdowns?
So, so what Facebook would say is that no, it isn't. So and let me step back. That's not to say that there aren't serious security issues. But I think what we would say is that there are solutions that address them better. I think that one of the panels yesterday talked about, so even in Egypt when they shut it down, was there more safety that happened as a result of that shutdown? No. I mean, there were more mothers who didn't know where their children were. There was more ability for people for lawlessness and disorder to proliferate, but it didn't lead to more safety. So again, I think this is where it's helpful for civil society and for companies like ours to get involved in the conversation about and try to address the fears that governments actually have, because there are some legitimate fears related to security and safety. What I suspect, though, is that the fears are less about security and safety and more about suppressing conversations. The extent to which we can have conversations that address the legitimate fears, I think that helps, because when there are governments that are saying, oh, I think people are, for example, people are using the internet or people are using WhatsApp to spread rumors. That's when you talk about, well, this is how, so for example, in Nigeria, we're having conversation with the CDC, with Nigeria's CDC, and when Ebola first started, people were using Facebook to spread all sorts of strange rumors about how you could catch it, which was bad for public health. And so the solution there is, how can you create centers of excellence online so that people know information from here is actually accurate information. So again, that's a simple example, but how can we work together to figure out solutions to the real concerns? Because shutting down the internet has not been shown to be a solution to any real concern.
Yeah, the answer is no to me. And then to add up to what she said, what we need to do is to build capacity. We need to create the awareness. Most of these government officials that we have, most of them are not even aware of these internet governance issues. All that is going on in the world globally, they are not aware. Sometimes some of them comes, let's assume bringing a business person, someone who did business, to internet governance. Sometimes it's difficult for them to understand. Taking someone who did business to head, let's say, an institution that is a regulator, he will not understand some of these issues. So we need to take this education to even the doorstep of government, so that we bring them closer to whatever thing that we are discussing. We need to bring the civil society close to government, and government also close to our civil society. These two people have to work together. If they work in isolation, there will be issues.
Okay. Anthony, finally?
Well, I will always be the controversial one. The answer is no, like has been said, but my reasons are different, though. I think, no, it's not always justified that it's security. But instead of us debating here and saying we want a thesis on the security, how it correlates and affects how it contributes, how security is threatened, that doesn't help. What is the fact? What the fact of the matter is, if I'm the ruler and I feel threatened myself, I don't care how many theses you come to me telling me security is not an issue, because I am afraid. When I shut down, it means I'm afraid. And you are proposing that you should instill more fear in me by making my people more aware that their rights to self-expression, their right to work has been oppressed. I know those rights. I know the people have those rights, but still, because I am afraid, because I am threatened, to me, it's a security issue. And because it's a sovereign nation, you can say all you want at any forum, but because it's a sovereign nation, I'll shut this one, I'll close that university, shut down the internet, and then, because that's where my people are being told about their rights, they're being told of all this is correct. The freedoms, they are all correct. All those freedom to work, freedom to express yourself, it's correct. And it's justified that people have got all those rights. But if me, the owner of, or the ruler of Banana Republic, if you make me afraid, I will shut it down. And if what is happening normally, people are being made more and more aware of what rights have been infringed, and then they become more agitated, and they want to put me out of power. So internet should not be associated with putting people out of power and so on, because then everybody will shut it down. So rather engage those people, change the strategy. Because like here now, I noticed, when I listened to the presentation, there was focus on where it was shut down, who shut it down. And when I looked at it, I was told last year it was 15. This year it has gone up to 20 so far this year. The whole of last year I was told it was 15. And when you look at it, it was like, with all the efforts, these are good efforts, what people are doing, and it's all well meant, but the numbers are going up, and you are making more governments afraid. So rather, why don't you concentrate on the 50, like in Africa? I'm told 4 had shut down by June or something. 4 had already shut down, and 50 in Africa had not shut down. Why not focus on the 50 that have not shut down? Just a change of strategy, which I'm suggesting, because I try to provoke. Even when I talk to the regulators, I will be like one of the journalists, the proponents for freedom when I talk to the regulators. So when I talk to you here, I'm also on the extreme end to say, why don't you change the strategy? Just a suggestion.
Thank you, Anthony. Okay, one more thing.
So just to that point, one of the reasons why Facebook focuses, so we have a politics and government program. And our politics and government program, we actually go directly to people in government, directly to people in power, and train them on how to use Facebook to engage people. We absolutely take the point that people are afraid that, particularly, I mean, if you look across the continent, if you look at the age of leaders, many of our leaders are not leaders who are comfortable on the internet. It's something that they approach with fear. And so that's why we have this program, talking to them directly, meeting with their staff, teaching them how to use the internet, teaching them how to create Facebook pages, teaching them how to engage directly, so that they see that it can be a two-way street, that if you want to change hearts and minds, that you can actually use this same technology that you're afraid of to actually engage. And so that's why for Facebook, it's a very important program. The one thing I will say is, so to the point about, the point my co-panelist made before, this is why institutions are so important. I mean, I know we talked about banana republics, but that's why it's important that you don't have one person who feels he owns a country. That's why it's important that you have checks and balances, so that the fear of one person is balanced with the judiciary, is balanced with government institutions that work. And so, I mean, everything is connected.
Thank you. To the audience now, who is moving around with the mic? Are you ready? Oh, let's start with this lady in red here. At the front, there's a lady in red here. Yes.
Hi, I'm Koketso Moete from South Africa. So I just wanted to talk about the misplaced sympathy with telecoms providers and the comment about them paying a lot of taxes. We saw the 2-year investigation into MTN. We know that they've been taking billions out of countries. We see the recent fines. So I think that's just a misguided claim. And then another thing would be, we've seen a lot of ruthless profit maximizing ways from them. An example in South Africa would be the overcharging of data, the disappearing data, and the so-called expiry of data, you know, our costs. So So I just think it's very, very misplaced when there is a whole lot of evidence that has shown that these companies are all about profit maximizing.
Thank you. Green shirt, next behind there.
Yeah, hi, Alex Gakuru from Kenya. I've been struggling here, wondering whether to raise this concern or this perspective, but after the gentleman at the end spoke in a very powerful way, I feel I should also raise it, because I still don't want us to narrow ourselves so much at this, how we don't have government, institutions, Africa, slapping ourselves all the time. But I want to say this, that where are these African governments learning how to shut down the internet from? United States of America. The US has the master keys to the internet. It disconnects a country at will, a whole country. They have happened, Somalia, because I think that's a country we have here. There are others that have been disconnected. And Donald Trump says the internet should not be let to the so-called multi-stakeholder, which I don't know. He wants the US to continue controlling the internet and what goes on in it. So let's not narrow this argument so much. We keep slapping our Africans and bashing ourselves all the time. We are learning, our leaders are learning from the best, the US. So I don't want to give us hopelessness, but I want us to have the bitter truth and know the reality. Thank you.
Okay, the man right in front of you, yes.
My name's Michael from Zambia. I'm from a law enforcement government, though I'm here in my personal capacity. Looking at the whole debate, when it comes to shutdown, I'll speak from the area of security, because no one seems to defend security. From the panel, no one seems to have come from government to speak on behalf of security. So security is suffering an onslaught without any form of defense. What I'm trying to say is, at times it is important, when security is taken into context of shutdown, to me, it plays a very good part, because if we remove the political aspect of it, there are sometimes when events occur in a country when there is no political commotion of any kind, but just maybe a security threat due to some mischievous individuals who would go online and publish some rumors of which may cause havoc. I think that is another step to take to curtail the split and bring harmony to a community. I speak like this because sometime back last year, we had a problem in my city where a rumor was created online that one of the pastors had turned into a snake. So the whole city, people went on Google, got some images of some snake somewhere in Asia, tied it to a story in my city. So the whole city was in fear. People went and burnt the church. There was acrimony, there was chaos all over. Because we don't have access to, it's a small city. There's no access of how you can shut down the internet. Had the internet been shut down, I know somehow, somewhere, a lot of properties could have been saved, human life could have been protected, and all other forms of uneasiness. Because at some point, people started even running away from town center, going back home, because there was that general fear.
Okay, I think the point has been made. Thank you. I'm going to choose 3 people at once. That lady right there, then the next one is the lady the other side, okay? And then the gentleman in front of her. Those are the 3 I've chosen now, then we'll go for another round, okay?
Okay, thank you. My name is Berhan. I'm a Mozilla Open Web Fellow at Strathmore. So I'm very scared of conversations like that, because in my context, security, everyone that's a journalist is a terrorist. And because of those reasons, websites are blocked, you can't get information when people are killed. So when we talk about security, we need to really quantify and qualify it and speak about important things, right? Yeah, I understand for governments, it's important. Security is important, and it is for everyone else. But we need to have oversight where it's a legislative process or it's a judicial process. You can't just go like, because some priest swallowed something, that everything should be blocked, because that sets a very dangerous precedent, and that's what we have. So we need to qualify that, please.
Thank you. Let's try and be brief like she's been. Straight to the point.
Oh, I want to address the point he raised, and just to ask him if he was in the session yesterday where this came up, where we are saying this business of governing by fear, because the internet will be used by a madman. Every village has a madman. The internet is also a village that has mad people. Now, if we start saying many times somebody starts a rumor, let's shut things down, this is governing by fear, and it's not going to get us anywhere. It's a means to no particular end. So this is also speaking to the fact that we need more policymakers to be in these conversations, to understand the same issues we're bringing, the risk factors, the studies that are being proposed are super important, because this idea of governing by fear is not going to get us anywhere, and is not justifiable in any context. Thanks.
Still in response to what he said, I just want to point out that the internet is self-correcting, and if people make false accusations, people with the right information are always online to also provide that. And in saying that, I would say we should not hide behind people's lack of prompt response or people's lack of proactive disclosure to be the reason why we are shutting down the internet. If a rumor was started about the pastor and people with live pictures of the pastor not turning into a snake respond very quickly, internet will respond as well. So it's not a valid reason to shut down the internet.
Thank you. I would like to remind everyone that let's stick to the issues of the internet shutdown and its costs. Okay? Rotating around the incident of the pastor and the burnt church.
Yes.
Okay.
I'm Mehdi. I'm a student. I wanted to give a quick comment. When they shut down the internet during the election time, I'm a Ugandan. I want to be frank. Where I was, because I went back to my village to vote, no one was concerned. I was there lamenting, the internet is down, I can't Facebook, and like, so? And I had VPN on my phone for starters, so it was also not so affected. So maybe we have overrated the impact of the shutdown. The moderator was trying to paint the image of an average African, sending pictures on WhatsApp with the builders. Those don't happen in average Africans. Average Ugandans, internet shutdown. Besides, there was VPN. The major impact may be mobile money. Otherwise, maybe this will have this conversation in the near future when we have really expanded the internet. Thank you.
Go to the back. Let's go to the back, extreme back, and we'll come forward. Let's be brief to the point.
Hello everyone, Daniel from Uganda. Mine is more of a concern directed to Ebele. So in Brazil, when WhatsApp was blocked, Zuckerberg came out so fiercely online and chanting slogans and saying democracy. But we've had very many shutdowns here in Africa, and no one from Facebook has commented. This is a point of concern and a point of worry. Is it about the numbers? Is it about the bottom line that matters? And then another comment about the internet and controls could be, if we could expound on things like the blockchain, where we have distributed systems and peer-to-peer connections. Perhaps we didn't have someone in charge of the walled garden. So I think that's some of the things that our techies can explore. Thank you.
Thanks. Go to the middle, back line, the back row. The gentleman.
Thank you so much. My name is Tony Johnson Muzira, a social activist. I'm from Uganda, the Pearl of Africa. Last year when we had elections, I was one of the observers in a district called Iganga, and we had violence in that place, whereby myself, I had VPN, I was accessing internet, and I went to report to the police officers, and they told me, can't you see internet is blocked, and you're not NRM. This is evidence. So, the shutdown, first of all, was affecting the lives of Ugandans in terms of their democracy, because people were chased away from voting, and there's no way we could communicate for the law enforcement. Because if I can talk to the police officer and tell them what is happening, and they ask me if I'm NRM, the ruling party of this country. Now, my point goes, the only way we can do this, because what I know, internet is a human right. It is a human right. Everyone has a right to access internet. So, can't we have a legal address? Can't we go to courts and maybe challenge this government? Because I've heard from Zimbabwe, whereby they want to amend the Computer Misuse Act, whereby even if someone is not in Zimbabwe and talks something bad about Zimbabwe government, he or she will be arrested. So doesn't that person have a right to say whatever he wants if he's affected? Thank you so much.
Okay. Same back row, but that lady.
Hi, I'm Malin Fiddler from the Berkman Klein Center for Internet and Society, and my question's for Ebele. Thank you for connecting yesterday's session with today's. And yesterday, it was brought up that sometimes shutdowns are a response to African governments' feeling of lack of control over internet. And one of the options that was brought up as a way, as sort of a recourse mechanism, was this MLAT process. As far as I'm aware, only 2 African countries actually have MLATs with the US. So for other countries, what options do they have?
Okay, thank you. That gentleman right in front of you. And then we'll go to that side. Lady, get ready to give that.
Thank you so much. Andrew Asasiri is my name, from Uganda Christian University. I would like to disagree with the gentleman who has said about security. I would give you an example of WhatsApp, what the people in one village is in this city, where they agreed that because businesses were tormented by robbers, they could come, attack businessmen, businesswomen, so they agreed that with the police, let's have a WhatsApp number with the police. In case of any attack, you communicate via what? WhatsApp. Now, I want to ask somebody who was talking about security, what do you think happened on that day when our internet was shut down on election day and those robbers were still in this country? What do you think happened? Attack. Secondly, I would like to say, when you shut down internet, you are denying people information, and without information, there can't be development. To assure you, revenue will reduce for the nation, because the government gets revenue through those small businesses that we are talking about. Yes.
Thank you so very much. Good, let's go to someone else. There's that lady, yes.
I'm Princess from Uganda. My issue is with the gentleman who just mentioned about the Ugandan shutdown. When we politicize such an issue, it becomes a real issue. When you say it's because of politics or because it's the NRM government in leadership and it was trying to protect itself by the shutdown there, I don't understand it. But I think the main issue is how did it affect the economic world? For instance, that time, mobile money wasn't working. You couldn't transfer or even withdraw. Most people, even the local, not so rich people, use mobile money in the villages as a transaction. They were all put on hold. They didn't choose that this is an NRM person or this is an FDC person to actually shut down. Everyone could not access. And then I want to disagree with the person who was saying internet is not important to even the village people because they don't care whether it is off or on. No, I think that's misguiding us because yes, it is important. The mobile money is important to everyone, whether they know how to use VPN or not.
Thank you, Princess. Let's give someone else a chance. The gentleman right in front of her.
Thank you very much, James. My name is Marvin. I'm from Uganda. I have 2 points on the economic part of the shutdown. How does it affect Ugandans? When all internet is shut down, as you said, every Ugandan, whether he or she knows that the internet is full to him or her, actually is impacted, as she has said, when mobile money is shut down. So all those employees that are paid maybe using the time rate. So like if you work 2 hours, I'll pay you. Most of these small companies actually pay people using mobile money. And in terms of security, in most of these countries where internet has been shut down, security is actually interpreted in the perspective of protecting the leader who is in power. Should the security be among the people, like theft or robbery, internet will not be affected. But if someone is being protected into power, then internet is going to be shut down. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Right here, this gentleman in front.
Thank you, sir. I'm Prosper Imbisibe from Makerere University. Mine, I want to focus on the relationship between me as a client and the telecom companies. I don't know, when it happened in Uganda, we all felt the impact, but I felt like if I had a right, I would maybe hold the telecom company to accountability and maybe lodge a case in court. So I want us to, how can we prevent it from happening again? How can we ensure the contract between us and the telecom companies is clearly stated and it can protect the end user?
Thank you. The gentleman in the middle there, whose hand is up. And the one behind him will be the last.
Thank you. My name is Kasozi Mulindwa. I write the Transition Post in Uganda. I wanted to say that there is need to reconcile costs. So while we are talking of the cost of shutting down, we also need to look at the cost of what can happen if a shutdown is not effected. And I want to indulge you a bit that even as we are internet enthusiasts and we all love the freedom of the internet, we need to have an appreciation of the challenges of governance in Africa. And I thought we would have people from government to help us appreciate that. Issues of a cost of breakdown of social order, issues of the cost of maintaining peace and stability. All these are very important when we are talking of reconciling costs. And maybe we also need to appreciate the history of governance in Africa. We have not come to these freedoms yesterday. These freedoms have come a long way, and we also need to have an appreciation for that. But someone talked of governance in fear and gave a very simplistic analogy. You see, when you say that every village has a madman, the internet has its own mad people, well, that is good. It's good analogy. But it will dawn on you when people start to die, when you have a genocide. Technology as simple as a radio caused major damage in Rwanda. Internet access is about 8% in Burundi, but you saw what happened just because something went viral or went out of hand. So we even as you're thinking that it is not that simplistic.
Okay, thank you very much.
Yes, the madman can turn out to be terrible.
Let's have the next person behind you.
I'm Peter, Makerere University. Let us take the thing beyond communication, shutting down, that's what I'm talking about, and we look at the national economic level. Like in Uganda, the shutdown took every day 10 billion shillings, which could almost be used to do other activities in Uganda. We have challenges, health challenges. Mulago is not having cancer machine, but they use this money to refund the communication companies in Uganda.
Do you have evidence for that?
What are you talking about? So, and another thing is that we have another challenge. If they had to refund the communication companies, what about the clients of these communication companies? So we need to set things that will at least help the clients, not only the companies. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I'm just giving you half a minute, those two there. This is half a minute strictly, and we come back here.
Okay. My point is to the point, the gentleman from the regulators who said, well, if the call comes, what do you do? Sometimes it doesn't come as a call. And I think the people in the telcos too, have a responsibility to the citizens. In 2012, during our Occupy riots in Nigeria, the circular came to the telcos, and people in there leaked it. And that helped, served as a force to actually galvanize citizens to fight against the shutdown before it happened. So I think people in the telcos need to grow a backbone and think about the costs to themselves too.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. My name is Sarah Magoba. With all that is being said here, internet, all the issues that are coming up, I think right now it's time for us to take up a number of key actions that will call our key stakeholders into accountability and say, hey, this is what is coming up, this is what we want you to do. We need to work in partnership with you and say, members, this is what is happening, but we need freedom from the internet and have the next steps done. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Now back. Thank you very much for all those opinions, the questions. We are back to the panelists. I request that we be as brief as possible. You have gathered the minds of the audience. So let's start. I'll start with
I'll just say, because there are two questions that are directed to Facebook. One was about MLAT. So no, there's no other mechanism other than MLAT. So that's sort of the answer to that question. And then there was a question about Mark Post. I laughed when I heard that question only because I'm actually going to ask your advice, because he did want to post. He very much wanted to post. And I specifically said no. And one of the reasons I said no is because I think you don't criticize someone until you've met them. And so but at that time, he'd never had any conversations, and I didn't think that it would be effective to have a CEO criticizing countries in general where we hadn't demonstrated that we have an interest. We hadn't opened a conversation. I just thought it felt to me a little bit disrespectful. And I'm just curious, by a show of hands, was I wrong? So do people think that he should have written some sort of post doing sort of a blanket criticism of internet shutdowns in countries across the continent when he hadn't been yet and we hadn't sort of engaged? Do people think he should have?
Show of hands.
I'm sorry? That was my very strong advice, and that's why it didn't happen. Does anyone think so it looks like no one thinks he should have, right? Yeah. Yes. Okay.
Great. Thank you. Wisdom?
Yeah, let's say in many African countries, capacity to take down unwanted sites is virtually absent. So what we need to start doing now is start building capacities from all sectors, civil society, government, all sectors. And then we need to collaborate. Every African country too have to try to have set within their country. Ghana, for instance, we have a national set, and then we are encouraging all institutions to have their internal cyber response team, so that in case of any unwanted sites that they see, they can actually report and work with the police, and then maybe collaborate with any agency responsible for, let's say, Facebook, for instance. When you see an unwanted site on Facebook and you see it, you can report to what? An institution. So that this institution should carry it up, contact Facebook, and then maybe Facebook, out of that, can have that unwanted site from the internet. When we start doing this, then I think internet lockdown will be a thing of the past. So that's what we have to start thinking. And also, strong institutions. We need strong institutions. We need to actually take this awareness to them. Most of our lawyers still think about their own way of doing things. We need to start educating them on these virtual platforms that we have. Most of them are not aware of it. We need to start educating them. Government is there. And then when these things are done, the institution will be empowered, the institution will be strong, and then they'll be able to deal with some of these things that we are seeing around and all that.
Thank you.
Oh, thank you. From what is coming from participants, I think it is very clear that indeed there are huge costs associated with shutdowns, and it's also coming out clearly that not all security concerns are genuine security concerns, but there are some which are also genuine security concerns. So I think as this forum, really, it's important also to acknowledge when we engage the parties that be, to acknowledge where they have genuine concerns, to acknowledge and try and work with them, not against them. And there was also concern that maybe I am sympathizing with, it was said to be misplaced sympathy with telecoms, the issues of disappearing data and all the like being mentioned. Yes, I just want to say that indeed I did not expect sympathy from the consumers because they are getting free service. All these zero-rated services, and where somebody used to use $50 per month, for instance, or $200 US per month on communication. Now with the data bundles, they can get away maybe with a small fraction of that. So I would understand. I side, because I'm also a consumer myself. I do know that these operators used to fleece the market. They used to cream the market, really. And the outcry is there that our profits are coming down, and it's true. Their contributions to the regulators have diminished significantly, and it's a percentage of their turnover. And this is real. Whether or not you believe it, it's real. Their profits are coming down, but maybe they were making super profits. So which is why even from where we are sitting as the regulators, we are not really sympathizing with them. We are telling them the business model has changed, just like you are saying now. The business model has changed. If the cheese have move with it or you starve. So I'm all for what you are saying. I agree. Because when we talk to them, we don't really say, yes, we hear you, yes, profits have come down. No, we'll be taking exactly your stance that you are saying. They have to get their act together. I agree. And I think there was also an issue on the internet being self-correcting. Indeed, that is true. There are huge costs to these shutdowns. And also, by shutting down, you are also shutting down those that could have spoken favorably in favor of the concerns, supported the causes. And so, indeed, I agree that, if left alone, maybe there will be third-party endorsement from other parties other than yourself to confirm that whatever you are trying to put across, to correct whatever you are trying to correct by shutting down, you get somebody else to give you the third-party endorsement, like a stamp of approval, as it were. Is this the final word? Or?
Yes.
Okay, in the final analysis, I just want to say as a final word that the internet is good, but it can be a dangerous tool. It can be a tool just like a wheel spanner. If it is in the hands of somebody who knows what they use it for and with wisdom and they know how to use it, it's a very good tool. But somebody can use it to beat up the husband. And then you can't ban, of course, you can't ban the person, or they use it in self-defense and whatnot. So I'm saying similarly, the internet is a very good tool, and for us to continue to enjoy this good tool, which has become, it's no longer a nice to have in business, for instance. It's now a must have in every business. So to continue to enjoy it, let us also try and promote safe use of it with wisdom. Let's continue. I've seen a few institutions are promoting good use of the internet, proper use and effective use of the internet to enhance, to improve their lives and to achieve all the objectives they may have. So let's make sure that we contribute towards the good use of the internet. Thank you.
Thank you very much. Wisdom, your last word?
It's working. Yeah, what I would say now is we all have to be responsible when we are using the internet. When we go online, let's try to be civil, do things that will not prompt government to actually start thinking of shutting down the internet. And let's try to promote the agenda of what, building strong institutions. Government need help, we also need help. We have to work together.
Thank you.
I would just say that notwithstanding some of the concerns that have been raised, so security concerns, none of those are actually solved by shutting down the internet. And I think that's what, I mean, even putting aside the cost of it, the reasons for shutting down the internet are never served by the internet shutdown. So I think it's incumbent upon those of us who care about this issue to first address government's concerns, to identify solutions that address some of the legitimate concerns that they have and to steer them away from internet shutdowns, which actually solve no problems and create new ones. And then also, I think we have to be quite honest to the extent to which there are some governments who actually don't have a legitimate reason and are not pretending to have a legitimate reason. And it's really all about shutting down legitimate political speech. And then finally, I would say this is not a specifically African problem. While I disagree with the facts raised by Brother Alex, I do think that there is something to be said. All governments around the world seek to control the internet in some way. Sometimes for good reasons, sometimes for bad reasons. And I think it is always our responsibility as part of the community to push back against that, but also to push back against that with data. That's why I end by where I began by saying that we are very much interested in identifying and being able to quantify the real costs of internet shutdown, and not just economic costs, because often the cost to health, the cost to other things that are actually very important are also at issue as well. So we're looking forward to partnering to doing that research.
Thanks, Sokobi. As we wind up, there are some things which have stood out clearly in this discussion or engagement. One is that the shutdowns definitely have a cost. Without doubt, everyone seems to be in agreement on that. Two, a section feel that most shutdowns are motivated by the desire to protect certain rulers in power. There's one who gave the example that if the security concern is on the side of the public, shutdowns are not affected. When the security concern has an effect on the ruler in power, then the shutdown is affected. Educating the various actors in society is a key issue that Wisdom has been raising here, and some of those that gave their input from the audience. That people need to be educated more about these issues so that they know what to fear and what not to fear. And also avoiding people-centered leaderships in Africa will also help us. Because if we are rotating around particular individuals and we think that life cannot go on without them, then it seems like these internet shutdowns will be with us forever. And then another issue was governing by fear seems to be the norm. It was expressed by some of the people from the audience. And finally, internet shutdowns affect all shades of people. This was there's a lady called Princess who was commenting on what some gentleman who was trying to allege that the NRM, I know the ruling political party in Uganda, somehow had a special status when it came to the shutdown, but she said everyone suffered as a result of the shutdown. So all shades, politically, economically, socially, and otherwise, get affected by these internet shutdowns. I want to thank you very much, the panelists and the audience, for staying awake after such a sumptuous lunch. You've entertained us very well, and I think the panel deserves a clap. Okay. Thank you very much. Time for the next session.
Okay, let's have a round of applause for our moderator. It's not an easy panel or discussion to have when there's so many questions coming from the floor. So what's going to happen is we're going to launch into the next session, but those would like a cup of tea, it's outside, but in respect of time, we'd like to go straight into the next session. So the panelists for that, please come up to the stage in the meantime. But yeah, so the next session will be discussing cybersecurity strategies for African countries. Unfortunately, one of the panelists was not able to join us, so we'll have
4 on stage. We'll have Alexandrine coming through from Privacy International, Ife Osaka coming back from Google, Jimmy Haguma from the Uganda Police Force, and Michael Ilishebo, who is a cyber security practitioner from Zambia. You may come through to the stage. And once again, just a quick reminder, to the back of the stage, to the back of the room, we have those who require their visas to please head there. There's a table at the back. But once again, we apologize for the hiccups in the internet connection we've had. Sometimes when you're discussing internet shutdowns, the irony is that your own connection isn't working as we've had here. But I've noticed that some of you have managed to overcome it in the very same way that some of the citizens around the country did. They use their VPNs, some of you have used your own connections, and we very much appreciate that you opted to do that instead. So as we wait for the panelists, please be reminded that you can step out for a cup of tea, but come back to join the discussion. Come back, as we'll be leading straight after this panel into the closing remarks of the forum. But once again, we cannot begin to tell you how excited we've been in the lead up to the forum on internet freedom in Africa. We've been very excited to see all of you turn up from various parts of the country of Uganda, from various parts of the continent, and indeed the world, making the time to come join us here. Share your thoughts and insights, bring out the debates, spark the discussions on all facets, internet freedom related. Once again, I think for that, we deserve an applause for ourselves. As the others take the tea, thank you very much. That is very well. Many questions came in prior to the forum, many suggestions on what we should talk about, but we only had so much time to deal with, so much time in which to squeeze in all of this. In which case, yesterday we tried to spread it out across the 3 panels. Today we could only make time for the panels that we've had today. But of course the conversation continues online. It does not end here. It should not end here. So please continue. Utilize the various hashtags that have come up over the course of the 2 days. Share them, stimulate the discussion, push out information that you come across. It's always good to keep it going in that respect. So once again, our panelists, Michael Lishebo is ready. Jimmy is back there somewhere. Jimmy, please come to stage. And Ife is on her way. Thank you, Ife. I think we can make our way up to the stage. But any questions in the meantime as we wait? Any questions about the forum? Anything you'd like to say that has been tickling your mind over the last day and a half that you'd like to add? So our panelists are having a little meet and greet. The meeting and the greeting. Okay, so as they make their way up to the stage, those who are taking the cup of tea, please find your way back in as we kick off this discussion, the last one of the Forum on Internet Freedom in Africa. Thank you for joining us these days. We actually began on Sunday with a couple of workshops for journalists that have been taking place. Many of them are here, so it's been quite an extended time for them. And yes, so they've managed to connect the dots between human rights and internet freedom, internet policy. It's been very exciting conversations that we've been having. So as we lead into the end, I'll introduce Alexandrine to start this panel. Thank you. But before, can we welcome our panel with a bit? Yes. You know, this is a panel that has the hardest task. Sometimes everything has been spoken about and the need to find something new, but they definitely have a lot to talk about. This is a very strong panel. So thank you. Welcome to the stage.
Thank you, everyone, for joining us. I know a few people are still getting coffee, and hopefully they'll be joining us soon. Before I ask our fellow panelists to introduce themselves, I just wanted to, as the moderator, just say a few words. We're missing one of our panelists from PIN in Nigeria. So Mr. Sensor was unable to join us. And I'm also a civil society representative, so I'll be having both hats, both as moderator and representative of civil society. I'll try and be as fair as I can, putting my diplomatic skills to the test. But that means as well, quite early on, I'm going to open up to you in the audience, civil society organizations especially. If you have any comments on what's being discussed, please put your hand up. I'll try and keep an eye or get the attention of the person who has the microphone, and we can do it that way. Because what I was proudest of for this panel is to be able to have representatives from government, civil society, private sector, and independent experts. So I'll try and maintain that balance by allowing the audience to be part of that discussion. So yeah, just to maybe in 1 minute, introduce yourself and the work that you're doing on this topic.
Hello. Oh, okay. Hello. My name is Ife Osaga Ondondo, and I'm legal counsel for Sub-Saharan Africa. And as legal counsel, I cover a whole spectrum of legal work within Google in Africa. And you know, also some of my work involves working together with our policy teams to ensure that we have the right regulatory environment in place. As you all know, that this is an emerging area for Africa, and so I spend quite a bit of time, you know, trying to find ways to advocate and push for favorable laws that create an internet ecosystem that, you know, promotes innovation and, you know, and it also is able to, you know, ensure that user information is protected, you know, and that, you know, people are able to, you know, communicate and are able to benefit from participating in the internet ecosystem.
Thank you.
Hello, my name's Michael Elishevo. I'm a law enforcement officer working for Zambia Police. However, my presence here, I'm participating in my private capacity. The views and expressions are not that of my government, they are mine. Though I'll restrict my topics to the general aspect of cybersecurity and cybercrime. Thank you.
Thank you. Good evening, friends. I'm Jimmy Haguma. I work with the Uganda Police. And previous, I was hearing someone saying it's unfortunate we don't have people from government. No, we are there, but we were just waiting for that opportunity to speak. I am acting as the Commissioner of Police for Information Technology and Information Management, and previously been acting as the Commissioner of Police for Electronic and Countermeasures. My focus mainly, one is deployment of systems and accessibility of these systems on intranets and internet. But also I'm passionate about what we call safety online and investigation of digital related offenses, but also a corporate and associate member of what we call the Cybercrime Initiative, where we look more of how can we, first and foremost, create awareness in the work of safety in terms of information security and cybersecurity. I thank you very much.
Great. Before asking my first question to the panelists, I wanted to just link it back to the discussions that we've been having for the last day and a half, almost 2 full days now. Recurring conversations and debates around the dichotomy that has been created between security and human rights, and particularly the right to privacy, the way that some of the discussions we're seeing on cybersecurity and cybercrime and prevention have been around the issue, the word balanced has come up a few times, and trade-offs. And so some have argued, particularly from civil society, that it's not about a trade-off, that you can have both human rights and protecting human rights and be able to enjoy your fundamental right to privacy, but you can also have security, and actually having security is to be able to enjoy those fundamental rights as well. And so just to put it into context, obviously today we're speaking around cyber security in Africa, but like a lot of the topics that we're discussing, these are global issues as well. We're seeing cyber security policies emerging at the national level, but also at the regional and sub-regional levels. And so I wanted to get the perspective from the panelists that are all representing different stakeholder groups, how they're seeing this process developing, what role do they play in different frameworks, legal and policy, but also on the tech level being developed to ensure the security of citizens here in Africa. Maybe starting with Google.
Okay, I'm going to talk about the role of intermediaries in this process, like Google. So intermediaries play a very, important and unique role because generally they are usually the ones who are linking authors of information to the end user of information. So, being involved in this discussion is key because, as an intermediary, we also want to make sure that as we, are providing this service or making this possible for our users, that there is security in the information that is transmitted over this, different platforms. So, so there are a couple of issues and ways in which I think, the role that we play in this process. The first thing is ensuring that there is data security. So that is a starting point, making sure that as an intermediary, when we are providing this platform, that we can be able to guarantee our users that, the information will be secure, you'll be able to, it will be able to, you can transfer it from place to place without being compromised or being hacked into or being, interfered with in any way, in several ways. So as Google, we have taken a number of steps to ensure product security. For example, we have ensured that we have HTTPS as a default in our products. For example, in Gmail. Previously, it used to be an option, but right now it's really a default in our product. Also, we ensure that we have HTTPS deployment, as a signal in such results, so that, for example, if you are searching for information on the internet, you're able to figure out, we're able to show you which sites are secure and which sites are compromised, or where you're likely to get into trouble because of of malware, phishing, and other things like that, or just people who are not doing good things on the internet. The other thing we also do is we ensure that we have encrypted private links between our data centers. We have introduced two-factor authentication when you are accessing your internet, your email accounts in Gmail. Also, we have safe browsing APIs, meaning that we're able to compare the sites that you go to with the sites that have been reported as being unsafe sites, to ensure that you stay away from sites that may be problematic. We also do have a vulnerability rewards program, which is where we reward those who find any technical vulnerabilities in our products. If they're able to identify some technical vulnerabilities and let us know, we find that it's a responsible way to be able to deal with the issues that there may be in the product. So we have the vulnerabilities rewards program, and then also we do provide warnings regarding state-sponsored attacks to some of our users. If you are a user who is the victim, or we suspect you are the victim of a state-sponsored attack, we will inform you. So these are just some of the security steps we take to be able to ensure that our products are secure, and to ensure our users, and to assure our users that, that this is something that we take very seriously. So it's something that we continue to improve, because, I always say that as you are trying to make good products, also the bad guys are getting better at, hacking and compromising information. So that's one aspect of it. The other aspect really is figuring out how to deal with issues of government overreach. So we discussed this yesterday, how we do, we get requests from governments, and we have to ensure that the way in which we respond to these requests balances, the security needs of the government, because as I said before, the governments, really have a very legitimate need, or legitimate reason for sometimes requiring this information, because of they're trying to save life, and for other very, very good public policy reasons. So being able to balance this need for information from the government with people's human rights, and their privacy rights. So I talked about this later previously, and I'm not going to go into it today because I mentioned this yesterday. We have processes, in place where we review every, request that we get, and make sure that, it is, legally sound. It is something that also makes sense from not only legal, policy perspective, and also is in the public interest. So we review everything very carefully to make sure that we are able to balance both these needs. And then the other thing is that we advocate for transparency, that we advocate for the right for us to be able to publish the information regarding the requests that we get. Now, granted, based, from the panel yesterday, we could probably provide more information, but as I said, it's an evolving, it's a growing thing that we do. We try to improve. If you look at our transparency reports currently, they're much better than they were before. So it's something that we're trying to do much better, because we think it's a very, very important in this whole process of cybersecurity, because we want to make sure that, that the access to information is not abused. We also try to advocate, we advocate and work with regulators, and governments to come up with systems that work. I think in the session before, somebody had talked about the fact that the MLAT process is cumbersome and not too many countries are able to use this to get information. We are aware of that, and one of the things we have been doing in the last few years is to try and improve this and make it a more efficient process and make it, easier for governments, to get information, and of course, taking into account the fact that it has to be a legitimate request that complies with law and that is reasonable.
Thank you. On a general aspect, when we talk of cybersecurity strategies in Africa, we should not just narrow it to country by country, because the nature of cybercrimes and other security threats online are general in nature, because the cyberspace is borderless. We should be talking about having only one cybersecurity strategy for Africa, because in my country, our strategy was put in place way back in 2010, that is Zambia, which led to the enactment of the Electronic Communications Act, which deals with cybercrime.
Hello.
It's on. The vision and the objective of the cybersecurity strategy in Zambia basically is built upon the 5 pillars. The first one is to promote an increased cybersecurity posture and demand compliance with minimum security standards. The second one is facilitate intelligence gathering, investigations, prosecutions, and judicial process in respect of preventing and addressing cybercrime, cyber terrorism, and cyber warfare. Establish public and private partnership for national and international action plans. The fourth one is ensure the protection of national critical information infrastructure. And the final one, promote and ensure a comprehensive legal framework governing the cyberspace. Looking at the objective of our cybersecurity strategy, I think it should mirror on with other strategies that the rest of Africa have. The Africa Union Charter on Cybersecurity, very few countries have ratified and signed to it. As a result, you'd find they may come up with a very good piece of legislature, which at some point will address all cyber threats on the continent, but other countries are either still behind or they think the strategy that African Union is trying to provide is not to their standard. As a result, we will not be able to reach a level where we will be able to coexist and fight all forms of cyber threats with one voice, with one tool, with one common goal. As far as I'm concerned, it's difficult to, if we are to bring 5 or 6 cybersecurity strategies from other countries, there will be one component which is fighting cyber threats, but the manner in which you implement your strategies, they will differ because laws also differ in other countries. What is bad in country B might not be good in country A. What is good in country C might be worse in country C. So basically, in the area of cybersecurity strategies, we should come up together and do everything on a common table where we discuss things and come up with one policy document that's going to stand the test of time.
Okay, thank you very much. In line of what we are doing or what steps are we taking in place, first I want to appreciate Google for the, say, what I normally call it the OTPC, the one-time password code. And just as I was seated in the back, I was communicating with someone, just guiding him on how to do that and set it up as part of information security. So in what we are doing as the Uganda Police, we are creating awareness. We have not only just looked at awareness in schools, universities, but if you've been following events in Uganda right now, we are celebrating what we call the Police Week, and it will be climaxed on 3rd. But we have come up with some handlers like the hash Police Week, the hash Fika Salama, the hash Ask Kasinje. All these have been platforms, and on our own website we have developed a document called the Cyber Barometer, which has been there, and we've received numerous people coming up to say thank you very much for what you have done. So in awareness, we've gone to that, but also joining together with the banks, especially under the umbrella of the Uganda Bankers Association, we've gone ahead to spread the awareness. Another thing that we are doing, of course, we are charged with the mandate of ensuring that we enforce law and order. And one of the things we are enforcing is the Computer Misuse Act, the Electronic Signatures Act, and Electronic Transactions Act. All these are new acts that are still new in the minds of people. Many people are suffering silently. And through our online platform like info@upf.go.ug or upf@upf.go.ug, people have sent in concerns about what has happened to them, even across in the diaspora. And we've been able to assist where we can. Also, we have also gone ahead in what we call the cyber crime strategy. You can't do that when you don't have a good investigative mechanism. One of the things we've set up a computer forensic lab. This laboratory is one of the others, like what is being used in the Uganda Revenue Authority. And this is majorly for investigation, for recovery of what we call digital evidence. One thing that we have to appreciate is that investigation of cyber-related breaches is not something small. This spans across through pages like Facebook/records, through requests being sent like to Google. At times we've been assisted, but of late, maybe she will tell us, most of their IPs are masked for their own privacy and security. And at times the ladders you have to go through for what we call mutual legal assistance or letters of regulatory sometimes takes long. But we've gone ahead to say that if we can't deal with the case, let's handle it. And part of the product has been what we call the mobile fraud breachments. I don't want to mention companies here, but if you've been following events, some of them have been in court. We've had scams like in pension. We've had different scams in different, what we call the circles, and we've been able to come out and investigate these. Of course, I don't want to leave out one critical component also that has been partnerships. And one thing that we're doing, we are partnering. As the Uganda Police, we are partnering because we realize that you can't do this alone. And we are using a strategy called community policing. In community policing, we are saying we are going to go out for number 1, partnership, number 2, popular vigilance. If you see something strange, if you see someone doing something strange at an ATM, can you notify law enforcement? If you're online and you're seeing a strange activity, one time they created what we call a clone website. Some companies have been cloned. We had a case of what we call the Nelson Mandela Foundation scam. Many people were fleeced because you are told you have secured yourself a job and you need to open an account with Chase Bank. I believe you followed that event. We have had fleeces like the Ponzi schemes like Adifast and Telex Free. And we've said, let's partner and also come up with popular vigilance. If you see people advertising an office and saying, bring money online, can you notify so that we can get to know who are owning, who are hosting these domains? Are they local or international? And through tools like domain tools, tools like what is my IP, and even what we call email spy and tracers, we've been able to at least curtail and minimize some of these. And the last one is what we call neighborhood watch. We are encouraging people to use all platforms. One of them is WhatsApp. WhatsApp is another tool where you can communicate. If you see something strange, you can take a photo. In cybersecurity, we are talking of digital security. We are talking of being safe online, and it trickles down even to the rural community. Working together with UCC, we've been able to come up with a project through UCC called the Rural Communication Development Fund. And through this, we try to extend access to internet to the rural community, but also tell them that you need to click safe online, especially in internet cafes. We've also, in addition, lastly, we've also gone ahead to sensitize people that with cybersecurity, it is porous. People can buy, you can buy a keylogger online if you want it. You can buy a drone tracker online if you want it. So issues of privacy, issues of eavesdropping, we've gone ahead to say, please, if you're not using your phone, why do you leave the Wi-Fi on? If you're not using that particular modem also, why do you leave the Bluetooth roaming? Because you are opening yourself to porous borders. I thank you very much.
Thank you for your contribution. I'm just going to quickly change hat for a second to respond to some of the things that were said as a representative of civil society. And I'm not speaking on behalf of, but just as an NGO. Some of the work that we're doing with some of our partners in Africa, but elsewhere as well, is to monitor policies and laws that are coming out on cybercrime and cybersecurity. And the legal analysis that we're doing shows actually that a lot of the provisions within many of these laws are actually potentially making us more insecure. They're calling from, I've got a few examples here of analysis that we did recently in the last year and a half in Kenya. It's actually not a law, it's a regulation. So again, here even in the process, there's a problem. It's not being discussed as in Parliament, in a parliamentary process, but it's a regulations that's just being developed. Issues in Tanzania where there's no need for a court order to seize devices or access communications, extensive powers being given to the police, including to be able to use intrusive surveillance methods that can look at keystrokes, so when you type, they know which keys you're typing, so ability to use that, and no protection for whistleblowers. And in South Africa, there's a bill being discussed, very vague grounds for issuing warrants. That wouldn't apply just to the person that's being suspected of the crime, but actually any other person who is believed to provide information as part of that crime. Again, no user notifications, and also a lot of obligations on service providers to monitor their users, putting this burden on intermediaries to play the role of monitoring their users and their behaviors. And some of the issues I've highlighted now are concerns that we're seeing in a lot of other countries and not just in Africa, and that are contrary to the very well-established legal provisions as to when a human right, ones that are qualified, can be interfered with. None of the issues that we're seeing here are necessary and proportionate responses to the crimes that those bills are trying to address, and are directly and significantly interfering with the right to privacy in disproportionate manners. So if there's anyone else from civil society in the room who has been taking part of this work, if you want to make a statement as well, just raise your hand up and I'll keep an eye on you. And just putting back my moderator hat on, I wanted to follow up with a question to the panelists. You mentioned different initiatives, be it intermediaries, in various international regional opportunities to collaborate on developing a cybersecurity strategy, and then more at the national level. I just was wondering around the process as well, which I think is really important. I was in a panel, following a panel discussion yesterday, where a lot of stakeholders, and not just civil society, were unsure how to engage on these issues. There isn't an open consultation. There isn't a lot of information being shared, draft bills being shared at the last minute, and not much opportunity to engage and do this legal analysis. And so I was just wondering how you've undertaken this process, who do you consult with, and how do you envisage that moving forward in terms of engaging with others on these issues?
So as a company, we work together with other intermediaries who are in the same space and are cognizant of the challenges that we have that exists in having a cyber security strategy that is appropriate. So we also work closely with regulators and government, and whenever we hear about new laws coming out, we will always provide an opinion and provide a view on what we think is ideal just for the industry in general. I'm not particularly trying to put a particular position, but generally provide some opinion on what we have seen working in other parts of the world. The advantage about being a global company is that you pretty much see how different laws work in different parts of the world, and you're able to see where it works well and where it doesn't. And for us in Africa, opportunity to be able to learn from those who have done things very well and from those who haven't, and make sure that we don't do that. So I think that that is one of the ways that we engage through industry members and other people in the private sector engaging with the regulators.
Basically, from what I know, when it comes to governments, it's a little bit tricky to engage the civil society and other sectors when they're coming up with laws. Because at some point, you reach a deadlock. You will not reach a point where you agree. Obama once said, there's a quote which I normally use. He says, we must give up some privacy in the name of freedom. So, to me, security overrides freedom, security overrides privacy. At some point, what is freedom without security? What is privacy without security? So every time governments come up with cybersecurity strategy and laws, in as much as we would want them to protect human rights, would want them to protect freedom of expressions, both online and offline, at some point, there will be some form of one sector which will not be satisfied with the laws. I'm trying to narrow it down to our Zambian ICT Act of 2009. I don't remember any consultations being made with the private sector when the act was being framed. As far as I'm concerned, it came out as a very good piece. Most of our country, our citizens in Zambia do not even know the existence of the act because most of them are still offline. But at some point, they will still wake up, and when they read the contents of that act, that's when issues of debate, issues of privacy will come in. So basically, it's difficult to bring everyone on board and discuss issues of security, because at some point there are sensitive information that you may have in mind which are prompting you to come up with a law or a regulation which you may not want to share with the other people who you deem are not part of your inner circle.
Thank you very much. I just wanted to first of all say that actually with my colleague, I don't think security overrides freedom, but the two things are enjoyed together. And because what is security without freedom, and what is freedom without security? Well, that's something we'll discuss about how secure is security. But I just wanted to say that in our line, what we have done, first and foremost, working with external partners, and this has been like, for example, the UNODC, United Nations Organization on Drug and Crime. There is something called the CCI, the Cybercrime Initiative, and we've come up with resolutions and guidelines on how we are going to share, first and foremost, evidence, how we are going to be able to have access, because in cyber strategies and security, it's first and foremost dealing with the lines or the red tape. If you can reduce the line of access to where you can get your evidence, then you are doing well to the citizen, because the citizens are more interested in how can I dispose of my case and how quickly can we get evidence. Other people we are working closely with is the Internet Watch Foundation. The Internet Watch Foundation is handling something to do with what we call child online protection. And that has an element on still the cyber security strategies, because we are talking of access. if we are talking of freedoms of internet, but how are we protecting our own children? So we've worked together with the Ministry of Internal Affairs and the Uganda Police, and are coming up with a document which we want to share across. First and foremost, this should be shared in the education sector, so that right from the curriculum, people are taught that you need to protect yourself when you're using a computer. Another one is what we call the Budapest Convention. We are actually working together with NITA under the National Security Information System, the NISA, and we are drafting a document where we are to ratify as Uganda to become ratified members of the Budapest Convention. And then another one is with the Interpol. Interpol is another agency that we are closely working with, especially in the line of admissibility of evidence and what we call collaboration and support. I also don't want to leave out the project called the Northern Corridor. This Northern Corridor project is covering the East African countries. Under this, there are areas of cybersecurity, and there are documents to talk of information security. And then I want to add a sector we call the JILOS, Justice, Law and Order sector. This has elements of the civil society inside there. And we have come up together with how can we come up with easy methods, or what are the best practices that can be used for you to actually bring out your case. And through JILOS strategies with UCC, we came up with a registration of the phones. And of course, that had also its challenges here and there. But the purpose was how you can be able to trace, first and foremost, not to infringe on the rights, but in case someone commits an offense, how quickly can law enforcement come in to admit and get evidence. And there's also something called the FIA, that is the Financial Intelligence Authority. This has also been birthed out of the Anti-Money Laundering Act, because we realize that even a lot of funds, a lot of money can be stolen from individuals in the name of Ponzi schemes and scams, or in the name of selling assets like liquidation, and you don't know, but you are online in an economic world. What we talk the e-commerce. All these are part of the e-governance and IT governance policies. And then in addition to that, we have the RICA, which is the Regulation of Interception of Communication Act. This is still being discussed further on how it can be implemented. And players are being involved right from the parliament and other people, so that we can come up with a holistic way of how to address such things. And of course, one visible thing is the government participation in such a fora. This is also one way in which we are trying to get the views and minds of people on how best we can address issues related to cyber security strategies. Thank you.
Thank you. I just wanted to go maybe to the audience to see if anybody wanted to share their experience of having been part of the different types of processes mentioned here by the different stakeholders represented in the panel. I see a hand in the middle. And it can be both positive and negative. I think there's been some discussions as well of some of the challenges, but I think there are also opportunities that we can be highlighting.
Yes, I'm impressed by the Ugandan law enforcement person for saying that privacy and security are not, you cannot do without the other. And I would beg to refer the gentleman who had said that you need to sacrifice privacy for security to a certain paper by Professor Solov, S-O-L-O-V, that I have nothing to hide and other misunderstandings of privacy. The fact that everybody in this room is dressed or takes a shower doesn't mean what they do behind those walls is criminal. So you cannot presume everybody is guilty until they are proven innocent. So privacy is actually a constitutional right, just like security is a constitutional right. The two go hand in hand.
Thank you. I think there was a contribution here on the left.
Thank you, Alex. Henriette from APC. Just to share the South African experience, where we had draft, and I think you mentioned draft legislation, cybersecurity legislation, which was broadly criticized by industry and by civil society. And in fact, it worked because the policy was withdrawn, the draft policy was withdrawn, it was referred to the Department of Justice, and they set up a technical committee to work on redrafting it. And at that level, and I think I heard a similar example from Kenya. I think Henry Maina was mentioning that Kenya has done that as well. Because I think what Michael's point is that it is very hard to build consensus because there is sensitive information involved, different perspectives. But I think having a technical committee so that you have two levels of consultation, you have a multi-stakeholder process at the drafting level, and that can take place behind closed doors, with confidential information being shared by all the actors. Then you get to a draft that you can share publicly for broad stakeholder engagement. And I think it might take longer to work in that way, but I think in the end, if you work in that way, you're more likely to get a robust policy that actors and business agents will actually comply with, and that will also respect rights. So I do actually think it is possible. I think we can bring all of those things together and share information if we're willing to invest in the process. And I think that is our challenge in Africa. I think our public participation and policy is very ad hoc. It varies from department to department. You know, talking about the South African experience, different government departments are better at it than others. But I think in our sector, that's what our goal should be, to maximize the engagement and the consultation.
A couple of hands here on the right.
Hello, good afternoon, everyone. My name is Karunji Shalon. I work for the Coalition of Uganda Private School Teachers Association. I want to ask our last speaker, the one who is on the far right, yeah. I just want to find out if you got to know about the previous messages that have been going on WhatsApp. Someone was like, we have sold WhatsApp to Facebook, so you guys have to adjust. If you want to continue using WhatsApp, then you should check on your phone, press some button on your right, then it will bring a blue icon, press on it, and then you can be able to access your Facebook, your WhatsApp. If you don't press this, WhatsApp will start charging you. And many things kept coming on, even many messages that were trying to emphasize the first message that, hey, I'm so and so, I'm the inventor of WhatsApp. If you don't do this, ABCD is going to happen to you. And so for me, I was like, no, I'm not going to commit to this. I think people were doing it, people were trying it out. The next day you get a message, hey guys, do you know, this works. Can you please try out sending messages to your contacts, and then you will see your icon, the green icon of WhatsApp turning blue and all that. I really felt I got disorganized, but somehow I liked it because it became drama for me. I accepted it and I was like, yes, every morning I have to open and watch this entertainment. I just want to know if you learned about that and what did you do? Because we learned that there were many people who were claiming that they own WhatsApp, and we got confused.
Yeah, if you want to maybe take a minute to answer that, and then we'll go back to... No, go ahead. Just she's short.
Okay, thank you very much. Personally, I got to know about this, and we still have been encouraging people to lodge in a complaint if at all you have been affected. But what we have done is we have gone ahead to inform people, first and foremost, about what we call safety. In that instance of what was happening on WhatsApp, we couldn't communicate again on WhatsApp. Now through, if you visit our website, upf.go.ug, we have actually been communicating, even before that began, about what we call safety online. In that particular instance, we didn't get any complaint from anybody who was affected. And you know, as law enforcement, you have to know whether you're actually, whether there is a crime or anybody has been affected. In the area of cyberspace, people are always trying out what they can. Some people just do what they can just to find out how many people can be taken up by what they have done. But if at all you lost data, or you lost your mobile money as a result of clicking any activity, or even your privacy was infringed, I can always ask you to lodge a complaint to our online desk. You can complain. We have a form on our UPF site, that is form 105. You can lodge in a complaint, or you can actually walk to our offices at Naguru and make a concern. but we didn't get anybody saying he has been infringed all their rights or there has been a breach at one or the other. But again, I want to confirm to you that anything you do online, you're not dealing with people, you're dealing with machines. Those people you see on WhatsApp are not the real people. Those are devices communicating. So don't believe that when you see some pop up on Facebook or an email on, it's actually an individual on. There is what we call robots. People can set up what we call online robots, or what we call malware, or what we call denial of service attacks. And they can hijack your phone, and you may think you're chatting with your friend, your husband, your boyfriend, but actually you may be chatting with a machine. So I encourage you, please, don't hurry to think that it's what they're telling you. Make a call, establish what is happening. Thank you.
Before going back to the audience, I wanted to ask a follow-up question to some of the panelists. We've been talking about cybersecurity and cybercrime in quite general terms, and I was just wondering, based on the policies that you're developing, are there certain areas that, you know, talking about Google, maybe starting with Google, some of the users that have expressed more concerns about certain issues around hate crime or violence against women online, or hate speech or terrorism, you know, what are the kind of issues that you feel that your users are more concerned about, and how are those reflected in the choices that you're making?
Actually, the concerns of the users depend on where they are in the world, because people different users have different concerns. And basically, I think what people are worried about are, you know, is it possible for, you know, a government to get their information, you know, and if a government asks for information, are we going to provide this information? That is a major concern. Another concern is, you know, can governments get information from companies, you know, and in many instances, companies that are outside their jurisdiction, you know, if they need this information for you know, for security reasons, or for, you know, or to deal with particular threats, or to save life, or stop any harm from happening. So I think that, you know, these are some of the issues, and maybe I can say a little bit about what we think, you know, as a company should be done to make this, to deal with this situation better. I think that it's for there to be a good system of exchange of information between governments and, you know, and private companies. I think there should be a system where we ensure that everybody who participates in this process of, you know, exchange of information protects human rights and protects privacy. So if we are to have, you know, governments freely ask for information, we must be sure that, you know, that they are governments who uphold human rights and the privacy rights of people. Then also, the other thing we also need to be clear about is to have some clear procedures in how, by which people get information, and procedures whereby, you know, if a government asks for information, if it's in the case of a, you know, a threat, that, you know, they're able to get this in a timely manner to be able to avoid the threat, and if not, you know, follow a procedure that ensures that, you know, that they are doing the right thing, and that this indeed is, you know, something that they need to do. The other thing we also need to, we struggle with our, you know, jurisdictional issues, whether it's okay for a company, for example, in Uganda, to get information, I mean, or a government, the Ugandan government, to try and get information from a company in Kenya. For example, we have the big mobile company in Kenya, Safaricom. Is it okay for, you know, I don't know, the UK to get in touch with Safaricom and to get, you know, information on users? And the question is that, can they get information on all users, or should there be some sort of nexus? And one of the things we advocate for is that there should, you know, just a general legal principle, there should be a nexus. You know, there should be, you know, the country should have jurisdiction. For example, if this is a citizen of their country, or maybe this person is physically present in their country. So those are things to look into. The other thing is we also have the issue of conflicting legal obligations. For example, in certain countries, companies are restricted from providing information, whereas, you know, the countries that may be seeking information, you know, have a law that, you know, allows them to seek this information. And I think one of the panelists here talked about how in Zimbabwe that, you know, if you say something that the government is not happy about, it doesn't matter where you are, that they have jurisdiction, that they can try and prosecute you. I don't know how that would happen, especially if you're not physically there, but the fact that, that there's a law and, there is a government that thinks that they have jurisdictional reach for people who are not even within their borders or in other parts of the... So these are some of the issues that, you have to deal with. And I won't take too much time, but I think the other issue also that our users worry about is, hate speech, and this is key for us, because remember, we want your experience on the internet to be safe, and so, and that is why, we take certain steps. For example, we have, particular guidelines that we require you to use, if you are using our products. For example, if you're using YouTube, we have community guidelines where we're very clear that, we don't allow hate speech, and we provide a flagging system for you to be able to be able to inform us if there's any inappropriate behavior on that particular platform. And also as a company, we have taken steps to do something about dealing with this certain issues which are important to our users. For example, in Europe, together with other companies, we have signed the EU Code of Conduct. In South Africa, we have been involved in contributing to the new policy on racism, discrimination, and xenophobia. We also, the other area that, that is also of concern is the issue of child pornography. And in certain instances, we will actually cooperate with law enforcement, if applicable, if there are instances of child pornography on our platforms. But also, as I said, our policies also ban certain behavior. And so in this way, we're able to, deal with the concerns of our users and make sure that it's an experience that is safe for everyone. Now, the reality is that it's not black and white. That, certain things that are acceptable in certain parts of the world may not be acceptable in other parts of the world. And so the trick really is we try to find a balance where we ensure that, that you have the experience, that you and your rights are not undermined in your part of the world because of what's, because of the beliefs or laws of people in other parts of the world. It's not easy. We don't always get it right, but it's something that we continue to do on a day-to-day basis.
Going to Jimmy from a government perspective, and you mentioned the different platforms you have for citizens to express some of their concerns. Can you tell us a little bit about what have those concerns been mostly about? Without going into, obviously, private information, just some of the main trends that you're seeing that are of concern here in Uganda to Ugandans, and what you've done to address those.
Thank you. Thank you very much. First and foremost, we have an online platform as government. It's called askgov.org. If you askgov.org, this is in line with service delivery. But now, if we talk about issues concerning safety online, I happen to be a signatory on some of the mails that come in, like one from info@upf.go.ug and upf.go.ug, especially in the line of police. Concerns that have been raised especially have been issues. One, for example, if at all I have lost, for example, a device, how quickly can I get it? Concerns have been raised in someone is harassing me, and he's communicating through this email. How can you clamp down on this person? Concerns have been also in issues of money. I was transacting through mobile, maybe through Western Union, and somehow the money is gone. Unfortunately, we didn't have someone from Western Union, but we work with law enforcement, Western Union. Now, challenges, I could talk of maybe some of the challenges we're facing in this, because some of the concerns have been difficult to expedite in virtue of the fact that the law operates under what we call jurisdictions. And even when you want to evoke other external jurisdictions, it's complicated. Recently, we had a case that came in from Germany where they say to have their money was actually intercepted through a Visa card. And we asked them to contact their nearby police, to contact Interpol. And by the time Interpol contacts this side, when you're dealing with issues of cyber infringement, you're talking about time. Time is very critical because most of the issue has been with the infrastructure that is in place to be able to address some of those things in the shortest time possible. And maybe we could also talk about sometimes the due process of lodging a complaint. you very well know we are still using the system where you have to walk at the station and get a reference. So we are trying to work out what we call an e-case platform, whereby you can lodge in a complaint online, and then afterwards you need to still come at the station, because still with the court system, they're still trying to revise what we call testifying in absentia, testifying online. It is not yet here. Maybe you can tell us your experience, what is happening. Can someone testify on a case which is in Kenya, but when he's in Zimbabwe, for example, through a portal or through video conferencing? So those issues of bringing the different experts who hold the vital information, we call them the big data, sometimes is a challenge. We talk about Google, sometimes a challenge that they may say, we can give you only up to this extent, and you can't even get them to provide a statement because they are not compelled to do so. They need some policies here and there. So some of the concerns I can say we've answered, I can say maybe 40%. Others are still not yet sorted because of many things that require integration. Integrations of systems, integrations of methods of work, and at the end of the day also making the law flexible enough so that you can be able to come up with a global space. Now, under East Africa, we have formed as government what we call IAPCO, that is the East African Association of Police Chiefs. And they have decided with that framework, can country X, can Tanzania collaborate without necessarily going through what we call the mutual legal assistance line in areas of infringement, cybersecurity, in areas of interception. When we talk of cybersecurity and strategies, we also talk about cyber terrorism. So I don't want to go into that area, but around that domain is how best we can try to assist people. But again, emphasize that the best way always is awareness and avoiding to, go into the deep waters where you will get infringed. Thank you.
Michael, did you want to add something on that? Okay. Maybe going to the audience, giving you the opportunity to ask questions to these different stakeholders, but also if you wanted to share your experience of working on these issues, some of the challenges that you're facing, and how you would want to see procedures and systems being changed to allow users, but also civil society, academia, and other stakeholders to be able to engage on these issues and be part of that open consultation.
So I just want to make a random comment, and it's just on the issue of language, right? I've heard the phrase child porn being used a lot. The problem with porn is, while we know things like revenge porn exists and whatnot, we know that when it happens within adults, right, there are opportunities for consent, that some people participate in pornography consensually. With children, it's never the case. It can never be the case. It's always child abuse material. And the reason I'm just noting this is that it was again raised, I think it was yesterday, the issue of language, just how we use language that normalizes certain things and whatnot. So I just want to flag, it can never be child porn. It's always child abuse material.
I agree. Actually, it's usually, the word is child sexual abuse imagery, right? So apologies, I should have used the right language.
My name is Sarah. Thank you so much. My question goes to my brother from Uganda. In Uganda, we really have a very, very good approach on doing policies, writing documents, doing everything. But we have one limiting factor. All these things are done and they are left on shelves. They are not implemented. The public is not even knowledgeable. Very few people are involved. And my experience with the ICT, very few women participate in such interventions. What is your new strategy as the Uganda Police Force to ensure that the public are knowledgeable about what is happening, the new interventions that you're doing, and the kind of protection that you're doing for the Ugandan government? Thank you.
We'll take a few more questions and then we'll come back to the panelists. I think in the middle here as well, and then we'll go to the back.
Yeah, my name is Adebayo Samuel from Nigeria. Critically, I think we gloss over the issue of internet surveillance and interruptions. And I'll paint a scenario. In Nigeria, for instance, actually we were not aware that mechanisms were put in place for surveillance purposes until some journalists decided to do some investigation and came about that the central government actually have an inbuilt system that was already into surveillance, and some provincial governments as well. 4 were noted to be notorious in having surveillance systems in place. Now, the issue is that state actors generally are clandestine in their approach to these issues, and they will never come out clearly to agree that they are surveilling the citizens. When this comes to fore, what are the, how do we as civil society and people generally react to such situations? Because even though now in the public domain we know that 1, 2, 3, or 4 governments have set up systems to interrupt, decrypt, and do whatever on internet basis, yet we seem to be helpless. Because when they were asked, they simply deny. So that's my issue, that we begin to look at how do we address such issues. Thank you.
Okay, we'll take one more here, and then we'll go to the back.
Okay, thank you. My name is Ray, and my question is directed to the lady from Google. My question is, in a landmark case last year when the FBI wanted to crack the iPhone, my question is, as part of, to get data in a terrorism-related case, as part of the big data companies, did you oppose it or did you like it? And also, if China, Mossad, or FBI, the big giants, pressurize you to release users' data, do you cooperate on it?
Hello there.
Just one more, and then we're gonna, Arthur, if you want to ask.
My question is directed to my colleague from Zambia. You spoke about the 2009 Act, yeah? Do you have a comment about allegations that in Zambia there's been politicization of pornographic cases where the police selectively apply the law and punish opposition, those who oppose the government? And there are also cases where they've even, I think, planted evidence to implicate those who are opposed to the government. Then I think you spoke about lack of consensus in the drafting of cybersecurity laws. What would be your comment in the case of Zimbabwe, where there's been securitization and militarization of the cyberspace? For example, the issue of Babajuka in the past couple of years, where government response to the cyber threats was disproportionate. And then finally, you quoted President Obama, but I think you quoted him out of context. Have you ever read the report that is called Liberty and Security in a Changing World? That was commissioned by President Obama, that comprehensively discusses the issue of security and the Fourth Amendment. Thank you.
The panelists to respond to those, and then we can take a couple more before the concluding remarks.
I'm attending this forum in my private capacity, and as you know, we are government workers. There are certain jurisdictions we cannot close. On the first questions on the issue of opposition government being victimized or being targeted, I cannot comment on that one. I just can't because I have no facts. Even if I had the facts, I think I'm not the right person to even comment on that one. On the second one, on the lack of consensus, there always come a time when you discuss a law, a piece of legislature, overnight and never come up with something meaningful because this other party wants to protect their side. This other party also trying to push their own agenda. So basically, consensus at some point is never made, but is pushed. I'm not advocating for that. I'm just trying to explain at some point, you never agree and bring in 50-50. One will have to bring in 57, the other one 33, or whichever share they have to bring on the table. As in the case of Babajuk, I think I followed that issue in Zimbabwe. As far as I'm concerned, your country is coming up with a cybercrime law right now. It's still in the draft form. I've gone through it. At times, when there are no laws, when something has happened, and you know what's happening in Zimbabwe, social media is another platform where citizens are able to come up and express their views. So in the case of Babajuka, I still believe since that time, since when that happened, it should have been almost three or 4 years ago, where there was even a bounty money of about 100,000 US dollars, which was put on the head of who is Babajuka. I still feel, I cannot comment, I still feel that if the laws and the regulations were there in the area of cybersecurity and cybercrime, I still feel the right thing would have been done. But because it's now when you're coming up with a draft law, so it's difficult to criminalize something that was not a crime then, and now that we have a crime. Thank you.
With regards to the question on surveillance, I just want to say that a lot of times, you're right, governments will be carrying out surveillance and nobody knows about it, okay? But a lot of the times, governments carry out surveillance pursuant to particular laws. So I think what is key in these situations is to ensure that we are able to advocate for laws in place that limit the powers, the government's power to carry out surveillance activities. And for example, one of this is to ensure that they are not able to have access to bulk metadata, and also to ensure that whenever there is any need to do this, that there is some sort of oversight or independent body that oversees and makes sure that there is no government overreach. The other thing also is transparency. We've talked about it all throughout this conference, and the thing is being able to report when government does this sort of activities has a deterrent effect and is important in the effort to ensure that we're transparent about these activities taking place and providing an opportunity for people to question as to why they take place. So the unfortunate thing is that government surveillance is increasing. It's not decreasing. And therefore this is something that we in our different capacities need to take seriously and try to make a case for reform of these laws that support these activities. And then regarding the Apple case, I think the question was what our view was, whether we supported the FBI's request for Apple to sort of provide a backdoor to the phone. And I want to say no, we did not support the FBI position. In fact, we joined the case as amicus in support of Apple. As you all know, the case didn't continue. The government didn't go forward with the case. So yeah, we were not in support of the government's position in that case. And then also I think the other question is whether we will provide information to governments when they, I think the FBI the intelligence agencies when they ask us for information. So this is not a black and white question. We don't say yes, it depends, okay? Is it pursuant to law, okay? Is it in the spirit of applicable law and policy? Is it reasonable, okay? Is it is a request supporting, a valid request because there is, a huge danger that needs to be averted? Is it in public interest? So whenever we get any of these requests, we consider it, we review it, and it doesn't mean because just a government has made a request that automatically the request will be granted. It will depend. There are some circumstances where it makes sense because truly it is, for a valid reason, for to avert a big disaster or a big issue happening. And in some other instances, it's not. Some instances, the government will ask for huge amounts of information, and we will actually push back and say no, we don't need all this information. We have actually, in an instance in the U.S., actually pushed back to the U.S. government point and say to them that they were asking for, whereas the request may have been valid, they were asking for way too much information. So it's really an issue of considering a lot of factors, and then based on those factors, making a decision.
Just to add on surveillance, we have a notion where we fear our governments more than we fear the corporate world. What I mean is, the capacity of most African government is not that big as compared to the capacity of the private sector in terms of, I'll give an example with Google. To me, I would be more scared if Google is tracking me than my government. Oh, no, I'm still, no. Wait a minute. What? We have a general fear for our government, actually, than we have the fear for the corporate world. We are being surveilled more by the corporate world than any government. If you are to look at most police stations or most police in Africa, they are offline. It's true, they are offline. If it means they are to survey, they will just survey a small proportion, a small part of the population because of their capacity. But with Google, Facebook, and any other of these big institutions, they are able to track us everywhere we are, whatever we do, everything, and yet we are not concerned with that. When we sign up to install WhatsApp, when we sign up to install an application that has to do with manipulating my photos, what we agree to, we don't even read. And yet, when it comes to government, we are the first ones to point a finger. When it comes to the private sector, we don't even talk about it.
Okay. Thank you, Michael, for your contribution. Is there any, I think there are a few people who want to respond to what you've just said, so we'll give a few minutes for a few more questions, and then I'll ask the panelists to respond to the questions as they're providing their concluding remarks.
Yeah, there was just one question. Someone raised about women involvement. I really want to clear your doubt that women are being involved highly, and women are being involved right from the political diaspora. If you can see what is happening in our own country, women are taking lead in most of the things. I'm also conscious of the vulnerability that women face and the girl child. At one point, there was an issue with Google, which was called the right to be remembered. I don't know if you remember that. The right to be forgotten. You can imagine I'm helping to change it over. The right to be forgotten. And this was especially about issues now. When we look at the scale of nudity, you find that the biggest percentage of it is the girl child. And so if there are issues which are concerning women or concerning the girl child, women are critically being involved in different fora where they are actually, we are coming up with the different policies. And one way we have involved women is we come up with something called Women Affairs, and even joining together with different law enforcement and agencies to come up with a fora where they can raise their views. And this can be addressed. But I still throw it back that actually this area involves both women and men, and as a whole. Thank you.
So we'll take maybe 3 questions. We'll take one from the back, and then one here on the right-hand side. I see a few hands up.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Helen from Zambia. I think the question by Arthur, Michael may not be in a position to respond, but I can give the answer. He was asking about selective application of the law on pornographic in relation to opposition party members. I think what the position is that these are journalists that we're talking about. There were some journalists that were arrested between 2012 and 2014 in Zambia for being suspected to work for the Zambian Watchdog, an online news publication. And these people, police officers, went to their homes and surrounded their homes at 02. And that was the time when I received that phone call. And they said, please, we need your help. And at 02, there was nothing that I could do because it was late and I was only a woman. So what I did was that at that time, I had to call the lawyer to go there. Because what we did was we agreed with them not to allow police officers in until their lawyer was there. So when they were arrested, the search went on until about 6 in the morning. So they were arrested and they had their laptops confiscated. So they were taken to Central Police and everything. The other one was taken to some police station that we could not locate at the time. So I made some noise about it before we could even hear the charges. Then we had these attacks from the people that were in the party in power and the police command itself. But we continued to make some noise about it. And later in the afternoon, they were charged with being in possession of pornographic materials on their computers. And we all disagreed with that because we knew that police officers were just looking for something to incriminate them because they were believed to have been working for the Zambian watchdog. And they went to court, but we don't know whether we should thank God or not. The government had no evidence, and the Attorney General decided to enter into a nolle prosequi, and the charges were dismissed. So I think the concern there was from us. I particularly condemned government and the police because there was a selective application of the law in terms of the journalists that were working for the public media and those that were working for the private media.
One on the right here.
Thank you. I'm Mehdi. I wanted to ask the gentleman representing the police. He's talked about the Ponzi schemes. I come from Makere, and in the span of about 1 month, we've had about 5 of them. And I want to ask, what's your definition for the Ponzi scheme, and what's your stand against the Ponzi schemes?
Okay, the final question here in the middle, in the white shirt. Yeah.
Hi, my name is Kamfisa from Zambia as well. It's not really a question, but it's just more of an appeal, and just to bring into context. I think it's very dangerous to actually begin to debate on the issue of security versus freedom, because if I give you the case of Zambia, it's something that's become dangerous for us. You have a situation where you have so many laws in the conventional space that are against the freedom of expression. Literally, many things are put or seemingly against security. Even issues of discussing the presidents, for instance, are connected to security. Issues of health are connected to security. And I understand, I'm sure that's where Michael's comments were coming from. And we've seen the consequences of that. So in the conventional or traditional space, we've seen radio stations being closed, for example, under the pretext of security, public safety. And we've seen that very danger now being moved to the online or cyber space. We've heard so many threats from government, just like Michael is echoing there, to say we need to protect the public security. So we actually had the president at some point saying that he would rather give up our democracy and uphold security, and you have all those issues. And then you have also the security agencies that tend to take advantage of this same notion of saying we want to protect security over freedom. So we have the intelligence services, for example, that filter or allegedly filter certain things. I think Arthur's report, brilliant report, I would advise people to look at it, that did some technical measurements that would show that there was a lot of filtering that was going on. So on one hand, they'll claim to have a very liberalized service, but on the other hand, they want to bring out the issue of security above freedoms, privacies, and the like, as Michael was saying. So it's something that would need to be very careful about and should not tolerate. For me, the one thing that underscores everything is what the gentleman from the Uganda police said, very brilliant. For someone who would rather give up security for freedom or give up freedom for security, then they don't deserve to have any of the two. I think they should go hand in hand.
If I can just maybe add, just reflecting some of the concerns that were expressed by the gentleman here at the front about this feeling of feeling disempowered is what you can do, even though there's evidence to show of the mass surveillance and the lack of action taken by government and also companies to protect citizens. It is challenging. It is very difficult work, but I think reflecting on some of the positive examples that were given, there are various things we can consider, and it depends as well on the context in which you're engaging. You could be doing litigation and challenging at the constitutional level some of the policies and practices of government that are being deployed in your respective countries. We're seeing as well there's a thirst and need to provide more and more information as well, and that requires more investigatory work to provide evidence to some of the technologies, and we haven't really talked about this in this debate, but also looking at the technologies that are being used as well to enable governments to adopt and deploy their various policies. And so that's another aspect that you could be looking at as well. Who is providing these technologies? Under what assessments are those being given to certain governments when they can't ensure that those technologies won't be used to violate human rights? But I'll be happy to discuss afterwards some of the work that we're doing that could be replicated in different countries. So maybe just going back to the panel and changing my hat quickly from being moderator, I think some of the examples given today are showing that things are being discussed and certain measures are being taken. Our concern still remains that bad laws are being drafted. There are still a lot of laws with very expensive powers being given to various government institution. Again, it's not always clear from the law who's been given the power to undertake various surveillance activities. And we're seeing as well that it's not clear who it applies to, who would be subject to it, what kind of crimes as well. And I wanted to raise that that's why I asked that question earlier. What are the crimes that we're actually talking about? And are the measures included in these policies the most adequate and relevant to address those concerns? So that's kind of the concerns that we keep seeing as well. And we're going to keep challenging governments and being asked to be part of the consultation, and not only civil society, but also academia and others who have the expertise to share to ensure that we're drafting good laws that protect human rights, but also ensure that we can evolve and live in a secure society, and not just for a few, but for all of us. So that was just putting on my hat now back as moderator. I wanted to ask some of the panelists, well, all of the panelists, take into account the last comments and some of the examples that were shared in terms of the concerns about the powers and the role that intermediaries play, but also government. What do you see happening moving forward? What are the things that you have in plan in the future that you haven't been able to do and that you want to be exploring and doing further to reassure some of the users and a lot of the users in this room, but also thinking about security? How can we enjoy our fundamental rights and live in a secure society without having to choose between one or the other, because in my opinion, it shouldn't be that way.
I think that the fact that we're having this conference actually and talking about these issues, that this is a good, I wouldn't say a start, because these conversations have been going on for a long time, but I think there's greater awareness on the fact that we have to make sure that we have cybersecurity strategies that, as you said, provide both freedom and security. So I think that what we need to do really in all our different capacities, in all our different, the different stakeholders is, wherever we are, try to advocate for a few, basic principles. For example, like you just said, and I don't want to repeat everything, that, make sure that, whatever laws that we have that govern cybersecurity, protect human rights, and uphold people's privacy rights, whatever laws they may be. The other thing is ensuring that, that it's very clear, in what circumstances, for example, governments can ask for information or can carry out surveillance activities, having very clear parameters, and not only having clear parameters, but also having very clear procedures for doing this. And then the other thing is also ensuring there's, accountability, and oversight mechanisms in place. And then I think most, well, I wouldn't say most important, equally important is also ensuring that there's transparency. So I think in the different areas where we are, if we, are able to, advocate that, we should at least advocate for, this being some of the key things that would make for a very successful strategy that would also ensure that we're able to, as I said, protect, ensure everyone's free, ensure both freedom and security at the same time.
Basically, when issues to do with like what we are discussing right now, I'm one person who has been pushing for the involvement of law enforcement officers in the area of internet governance. There's too much ignorance out there. You may have a law, but somebody may not know the concerns people are raising. So there's need for capacity building. We need to build capacity in our law enforcement officers. We bring on board issues such as freedom of expression, rights of women online, violence against women online. It becomes easy for them, even when they apply the law, it becomes easy for them to understand and have a balance of issues from both sides. And like the situation right now, there are very few law enforcement officers who are involved in programs like these. Very few. I might have been the first law enforcement officer to be part of the Africa School on Internet Governance, and I've been pushing that we have as many law enforcement officers being part of the Internet Governance. It becomes easy. You end up speaking up issues where you agree and actually build each other's capacity for the betterment of everyone else's light. So basically, you can come up with any strategy, but as long as that sector, that area which is law enforcement, is not brought on board, I think we'll still continue talking about these issues even 5, 6, 7 years from now. Because like the presence here, we might just be the two of us who are law enforcement officers, him and me. The rest of you are either business, civil society, academia, or business. It depends, but had the organizers also invited at least maybe 10 or 15 law enforcement officers to be present here, as we disperse, as we go out, we keep on talking while we are working. We keep on teaching each other. If a case is reported and you who was fortunate enough to have undertaken a training or been present in such kind of a forum like this one, it's easy for you to kind of narrow down everything and probably help that person or bring up issues that will make the other party go back satisfied. In the absence of such measures being put in place, we'll still continue talking about issues with surveillance, we're still talking about issues with violence against women, we're still talking about issues where the selective application of the law. So basically, let's try at all costs. We put in all measures to ensure that next time law enforcement officers are involved, are invited. Even if they are spectators, at least they'll pick 1 or 2 or 3 things. Thank you.
Thank you very much. I just want to first respond to my brother. I didn't get your name from Makere. As a CFE, that is fraud examination, I just want to shed light on Ponzi schemes. A Ponzi scheme is not criminal in nature. I want to tell you that openly. It has elements of criminality in what we call insolvency or bankruptcy fraud. And we normally call it a planned bust out. Now, because you're dealing with an online firm and you are being asked to deposit some money somewhere, you don't have what we call the risk. The risk is higher. And most of them, if you read about Ponzi schemes in Brazil, Ponzi schemes in other countries, you'll find that they have come up with laws that govern them. Now, the danger that you face, especially here in Uganda, even in Africa, most of these online-related schemes are operating in a different country out of your diaspora. And most of the time you are dealing in what we call digital currencies. And now they are running what we call the Bitcoin and other systems. What the danger is that you're throwing your money, and what is going to happen, there is going to be a planned bust out. A Ponzi scheme operates on a time frame. So by the time you jump into it, It's using what we call high-level network market tree. So I would propose on my take is that get involved in a venture whereby you can walk into that office, or you have what we call a document, or you have a signed off a document, and you actually have the law that binds that organization, so that in case there is a breach, you can easily take this organization to court of law. And not forgetting that even proceedings in courts of law also sometimes are costly. I want to also just shed light briefly on the issue of what has been the outstanding challenges, and then the issue of the media and the government. I must admit that media and government need to move together. What we are not focusing on is that even when you talk of surveillance, there's what you call ethical surveillance and unethical surveillance. Ethical surveillance is focused surveillance. If you want to see that whatever you're talking about is being tracked, you just type visibletweets.com, or you say mention tweets. You will see that if you have a catchword, it's being monitored. It's not for bad intention. It's for statistics and analytics. But you have to also be conscious that out there in the space, some people are unethical or malicious, or may misuse their authority to infringe on your privacy. So as long as the media is focused, in Uganda we have the media center and we have the law. So whatever we do should be enjoyed within the confinements of the law. And where do we run for redress? It is the courts. If the court systems are dead, then where are you going to run to? You may resort to an uprise. But remember, that is also criminal in nature. So I believe what we need to work towards too is creating what we call the JILO sector. And that's what we are working for, justice, law, and order sector. This involves civil society, whereby a person or group of persons can complain against another individual, even when they are not directly infringed, when they are not directly affected. And I think for Uganda, they've come up with the feeder, where women are encouraged to go in and complain. But in the area of cybersecurity, I think we need to form more societies. We need to form a platform whereby we can put different professionals together and reach out to the concerns and needs. Remember, the job of law enforcement is not only for law enforcement. For us, in our strategy of community policing, we say the police is the community and the community is the police. Thank you.
Okay, just maybe to wrap up, as we're running out of time, and I'm surprised the organizers haven't made big signs for me already. I think I wanted to pull out a few things that were discussed by the panelists, but also the audience, around the need for more transparency of the laws, and to understand when your right can be interfered with, when it's necessary and proportionate to address some of the concerns and the investigations ongoing, possibly when investigating crime, but also the practices and checking that the practices match the laws and what is in the power of the government, in terms of as well including having multi-stakeholder process and ensuring that that takes place very early on. And there's a good example here from South Africa that could be maybe replicated elsewhere, and I'm sure there are many more good examples that we could be focusing on as well. I think an issue as well with the members of the audience raising questions around surveillance and practices of government, but also companies. There's a need to address those concerns in terms of we can't just speak of cybersecurity and cybercrime in a vacuum. We need to understand the context in which we're having those from country to country. That will depend on what's already been done by the government and plans that they already have that are already raising enough concerns in that way. And there's also mention of maybe having a continental approach to cybersecurity, and as we know, we have the African Convention, but there could be maybe other mechanisms if that one, we're not sure yet where it's going, given that it hasn't been signed or ratified yet, but that's definitely something to keep an eye out if that is the process that governments here in Africa want to follow. Thank you, everyone, for your comments. Thank you to the panelists for sharing the work that they're doing. And I encourage you, if you have more questions, to approach them before they disappear. And now I think we're going to wrap up for the end of the conference. So I'm going to hand it over to CIPESA. Thank you.
Let's give our panelists another big clap. We would like to thank everybody who attended this forum, dedicating 2 days of sitting here, additional days of travel is not to be taken lightly. We are very, very grateful to all the people who presented, and we are also grateful to those who supported in the preparation of the forum. I would like to speak very, very briefly about where we are as far as I'm concerned and where we would like to go. We started this forum in 2014, so this is the third that we have held. We are really happy that we have continued to see growth in terms of the depth of discussions, in terms of the number of participants and the issues that they're able to articulate, but also in terms of the number of panels and the support that we receive from others who, like us, care about promoting internet freedom. There are not very many conversations, we say, on our continent that address issues related to freedom of expression online, related to issues of the free flow of information. The internet is becoming crucial, is becoming really, really central to our lives, our livelihoods, our rights, but there are many threats, as we have seen in this forum, as we have heard from very many speakers from different countries. And so we think it is very important that the issue of internet freedom gets on the agenda of very many of us who work in civil society, those who are in government, the media, and very many other actors. When we go away from here, we would like for everybody to continue the discussion and the conversations on Twitter in the work that you do advocating for better freedoms. And we hope that you'll be able to have more ways of collaborating in order to advance this agenda. We would like to thank, and I'll mention them, the organizations that supported this forum very, very generously, who enabled us to bring to this forum more than 70 individuals from outside of Uganda. Another organization also brought its own participants outside of those 70 that I have mentioned. And those organizations, in no particular order, include the Open Technology Fund, Google, Facebook, HIVOS Eastern Africa, the Ford Foundation, and Small Media. We are really, really, really happy with your support. Let's give them another clap, please. There are many suggestions which have come up here. So what we are going to do is to try and produce a report that captures some of the key issues that came up here in terms of what are the challenges, what are the opportunities, how can we improve what we are all doing in order to take this work forward. We'll share that report when it is ready. Where do we also want to go from here? We would like to have the forum once again in 2017. We would like to try and have it not in Kampala because many of these things are happening in other parts of the continent. In fact, it's actually cheaper to hold it in some parts of the continent which have, for instance, better transport networks. So we shall explore that possibility, and we will look forward to the involvement, the support, the participation of everybody in terms of giving ideas for what we should address and how we should have the forum. That said, I thank everybody once again, and I hope you have a good evening, and for those who are traveling back, safe travels. Asanteni.
This is the man. The one and only. Where's that man? You know, I was surprised when I came here. We have heard a lot about you. Good or bad? I don't know.